Outside Dongwang Imperial Palace, the Devil Emperor stood in the sky while Yuxing stood behind him. The Buddha was in front of him, still on guard. He had not foreseen that he would be too late. He gazed into the Imperial Palace. Now, even if he wanted to, it had become impossible for him to stop anything that was going to happen. He should have been more decisive and taken action when his suspicions had first been aroused. But since things had come to this, he also wanted to see how things would end inside Dongwang Imperial Palace. At the foot of the Golden Sky stairwell, there were two great empresses with remarkable auras. Both were peerless in elegance and talent. They were true goddesses. At that moment, the two great empresses were looking at Futian below them. A petrifying sword divine matrix used their consciousnesses to immediately appear above the sky. Countless runes lit up and glowed within the golden divine matrix. All at once, rays of light from the divine matrix shone down and enclosed the entire area, shrouding Futian. Runes and divine swords appeared one after another and caused havoc in the area. It was the Tianqing divine sword that could cut through the sky. Tianqing divine sword! Futian looked at the two empresses. They could summon the Tianqing divine matrix to bring unlimited Tianqing divine swords. It felt as if the whole land was about to be buried. A sharp screeching pierced the air, and divine swords emerged one after another from the Tianqing divine matrix in the sky. They contained the divine power of the Tianqing matrix, and when they attacked, golden bolts of light appeared in the sky. Everything was going to be annihilated. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. Accompanied by an intense light, the Tianqing divine swords started their downward onslaught. A dazzling divine glow lit the top of the divine matrix, but Futian's body shimmered at the same time. The light screens that had been formed from innumerable world particles now surrounded him. Cackle! The horrifying divine swords attacking him were now on a completely different level from Dongwang Diyuan's. They contained the true Tianqing divine power and could even penetrate the world particles and the light screens. Cracks appeared on Futian's defense shield as the swords continuously made holes in it. Futian was somewhat astonished when he raised his head and saw what was happening. These two great empresses were even more powerful than a usual great emperor. Even so, compared to the person he was now, there was still a large gap. An intimidating divine glow emitted from Futian. He raised his left arm, and insurmountable divine power rushed from his hand. Heaven-slaying divine power burst forth, and divine light lit up the area. Tianzhu! He raised his hand and blasted the air with his palm. Countless divine swords came forth and clashed with the falling divine swords. At the same time, he stepped into the void. The silver spear in his right hand released an overwhelming divine glow as he thrust it into the Tianqing divine matrix. The spear broke through the void, and a striking divine light burst through the land onto the divine matrix. It caused the whole matrix to shake violently, and the appearance of countless cracks after that. The cracks grew rapidly until the divine matrix disintegrated with a loud bang. Futian's spear continued to dominate. Futian continued his steps upwards. His silver spear was unstoppable. The two empresses eyed him intensely, and then unexpectedly moved aside to let him through. It was like they knew they would not be able to stop him. Futian stepped onto the golden sky stairwell without a hitch. He made his way up, step by step, his footsteps seemingly heavy. At the end of the sky stairwell was Dongwang the Great. He was one of the 6 great emperors of the 7 realms, and the ruler of the divine prefecture. He was the cultivator with the greatest achievements for 1,000 years and was known as the most outstanding of all the great emperors. The 4 emperors who had worked together to kill him went away in defeat. Just then, an incredible heavenly might descended onto the golden sky stairwell. Revelation divine power radiated out. At once Futian's movements felt heavier. Even so, he continued releasing his divine power defiantly, and his whole body glowed in an attempt to withstand the sealing power of the revelation divine power. Bang! As he stepped forward, the golden sky stairwell quivered. He paused and glanced up. The frightening golden divine light and the revelation divine power had combined and were wielding their influence onto the area. He started climbing the stairwell again. Another loud explosion sounded as the golden sky stairwell let out a roar. Even things in the distance were shaking as if they had felt the impact. Bang! 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 Futian's steps slowed, but every step set off a storm. In the beginning, it was just the golden sky stairwell trembling, but afterward, it was the entire Dongwang Imperial Palace. They shook with every step Futian took. Presently, it was completely silent within all corners of Dongwang Imperial Palace. Everyone's gaze was focused on the same direction, where Dongwang the Great was seated. Had Futian reached? Will Dongwang the Great kill Futian this time? Futian had made it onto the golden sky stairwell step by step, and finally, he completed his last step of the stairwell and reached the top. In front of him was a path paved with golden divine shimmers. At the end of the path was another flight of stairs, although there were only 9 steps this time. At the top of the flight of stairs was an imperial palace, and in front of the imperial palace was the divine throne. And on the divine throne stood Dongwang the Great. It looked as if he had always been there. Futian felt as if his heart had been hit by something just then. There was a vague sense of déjà vu. It felt as if he had been in this exact same situation before. Not bad! Dongwang the Great looked at Futian, who had reached the top of the sky stairwell. Where are the people of Yi Imperial Palace? Futian demanded to know. Dongwang the Great got up from his throne but did not answer Futian's question. He walked down from the divine throne, down the flight of stairs, and stopped in front of Futian. The terrifying revelation divine power suppressed everything and was impossible to restrain. Boom! The divine power within Futian roared and burst forth, surging around him. It was his first time meeting Dongwang the Great, one of the 6 great emperors. He could genuinely feel that immense suppressing pressure upon him that came from the revelation divine power. Buzz! Another terrifying divine power flowed around Futian. His body suddenly moved and broke free from the shackles of the revelation divine power. He turned into a bolt of light, and his spear pierced out. When his spear attacked, time and space seemed to be distorted. It looked like it was somewhere far, yet the next moment, it was right in front of him. A petrifying divine light radiated from Dongwang the Great's eyes. The area around them turned into the revelation divine domain, weakening the power of the spear as it crashed onto the light screen of the divine domain. Crackle! The silver spear astonishingly distorted time and space and devoured the divine power within the revelation divine domain. This caused Dongwang the Great much astonishment. He then blasted the air with his palm to suppress everything. Bang! Another loud bang and the divine power tossed Futian out. He stared at Futian and continued. Path-slaying cultivation, creating a micro-heavenly path on your own, distorting time and space, and being able to devour the revelation divine power. It won't be long until you accomplish something great. Futian frowned. He did not expect Dongwang the Great to be so knowledgeable about his cultivation. It was as if he knew it like the back of his hand. Looking at the towering figure in front of him, he reflected that it was the first time he had seen the other at such close quarters. Dongwang the Great had walked down from his divine throne. They stood there, looking at each other, their eyes locked together. This scene felt like it was predestined. It could only be fate that such an encounter would take place in their lives. Just like what Dongwang the Great said, he had been waiting for a very long time for this. With a wave of his hand, immediately, the revelation divine power that had been enveloping the endless space removed itself from Futian and spread to the surrounding regions, locking down the area. Yet it did not touch Futian. Huh! Futian was shocked. He had already experienced the powerfulness of Dongwang the Great's revelation divine power. What was Dongwang the Great's intent in removing the power from him? Dongwang the Great then took out a silver spear, which he held in his hands. It seemed as if he wanted to fight Futian on equal footing. His head full of black hair swayed in the wind as his long robe fluttered. He held the spear in his hands horizontally in the air. Looking at Futian, he shouted, "Let's start!" Futian stared at Dongwang the Great, and the spear in his hand burst out with divine light. An extremely powerful divine power surged forth and resulted in an overwhelming pressure in the area. His body moved like a bolt of lightning, striking out with his spear. He broke through. Dongwon the Great's eyes became extremely abnormal. Divine light swirled within those eyes as if there was divine power in them. His hand shook slightly, and he attacked with his spear too. Bang! A dull bang accompanied the crashing of the two spears together. Sharp end met sharp end, causing the surrounding space to tremble violently. However, as the revelation divine power had confined the entire region, the storm was unable to spread outside, and only this region was shaking. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. How quick! Yi Futian uttered in his heart. At such a near distance, and with a swift attack in its execution, Dongwon the Great could block his attack. In his eyes, Dongwon the Great's movement was not fast, but he was accurate to the extent that it hit the sharp point of the spear. A terrifying force threw Yi Futian back out to where he had been at the start. The spear that contained the heaven-slaying divine power could not shake his opponent. But Yi Futian was not ready to concede defeat. A storm of divine power swept along his body and enveloped the area. The battleground became immensely oppressive. Yi Futian's body transformed into a ghost, but there was a blurred shadow where he had stood just moments ago, and he left a series of afterimages behind him. The second attack broke through. This second attack contained an exceptional power that tore the void apart and smashed a section of the sky. One could only imagine the intensity of its power within this constricted domain. An exceptionally overpowering emperor's might enveloped the area. Dongwon the Great's robe swayed, and he attacked again with the spear in his hand. Furthermore, his spear faced Yi Futian's head on. When their spears clashed, a strange sensation arose within Yi Futian. He vaguely felt that the power of his spear technique had not yet reached its maximum potential. It was as if it was being suppressed. It was like its attack power could not be fully released as it inhibited the other's spear technique. Yi Futian was once again thrown back to his starting position. His domineering and unrivaled sword technique seemed like it was attacking cotton, his attacks creating no noticeable effect at all. What kind of spear technique is this? Yi Futian looked closely at Dongwon the Great's eyes. Within the eyes, which contained golden divine powers, he could somehow make out an extraordinary power of perception that could see through all pretense. It was as if from the moment he had released his spear, everything had been predicted by Dongwon the Great. What's this? Yi Futian's heart started to beat quickly. This ability of Dongwon the Great was very similar to one of his that had been with him since his youth. What was all this about? An even more aggressive aura emanated from Yi Futian. Divine power circled the top of his silver spear, and the tip of the spear glowed with divine light as the makings of a terrifying vortex appeared. He struck once again. Time and space seemed to have become distorted after this strike, and an immensely oppressive aura broke out. Yet again, Dongwon the Great's return strike was accurate to the smallest degree, but this time, Yi Futian's spear suddenly became faster and came down earlier. At that moment, Dongwon the Great felt like he was mistaken, but in actuality, his emperor eyes had seen the difference in the speed of time flow. Bang! Yi Futian's spear landed. This time it was finally not repelled by his opponent's spear technique, and could do maximum damage. In an instant, a petrifying vortex storm devoured everything, and the whole area seemed to be on the verge of collapse. The spear in Dongwon the Great's hand amazingly broke and crumbled into pieces. Subsequently, it got devoured into the vortex storm. Yi Futian's attack continued its onslaught straight ahead. It was about to approach Dongwon the Great's body when a frightening revelation divine light rushed around his body. Boom! A loud bang, Yi Futian's spear was blocked by an invisible force restraining it. Yi Futian's arm shook, and he spun his spear while continuing moving forward. He penetrated the revelation divine light, and was inching bit by bit toward Dongwon the Great. It was the first time the both of them had come this close. Dongwon the Great looked fixedly at him. The terrifying storm seemed to devour and tear everything apart in the vortex, but could not affect Dongwon the Great. An absolute defense shot up around his body, and Yi Futian's spear power was weakened to the point that it could not move forward. Distortion of time and space is the supreme manifestation of the laws of the micro-heavenly path. What is this spear called? Dongwang the Great looked at Yi Futian, who was just a short distance away from him. He did not retaliate but instead asked a question. In fact, with Dongwang the Great's terrifying prowess, he could attack Yi Futian right then. Yet he did not so, but instead calmly asked a question like he was having a normal conversation with him. Entombed? Yi Futian replied. Entombed. Dongwang the Great nodded in acknowledgement, then said, It could break my spear technique. Not bad. A pity I came a bit too early. If my heavenly path had been perfected and I made it to the emperor level, perhaps I could have had a fair battle with you. Yi Futian sighed. He ultimately was still not on the same level as Dongwang the Great. This time, the human ancestor invited me to participate in the battle. That's why I led cultivators to invade the divine prefecture. But this whole thing was solely my doing. I do not know if I will die here, but I plead you to let the cultivators of Yi Imperial Palace go. Dongwang the Great looked calmly at Yi Futian and nodded. Sure. Seeing Dongwang the Great agree, the divine power in Yi Futian roared fiercely and was still maintaining its onslaught. The spear in his hand wanted to break through the defense. Upon seeing how determined and persistent Yi Futian was, a smile suddenly appeared in Dongwang the Great's bright eyes. The smile was exceptionally gentle and radiant. It did not seem to belong to a person who harbored any resentment. Puff! A soft sound floated out, and the area suddenly became completely silent. Yi Futian was stunned. Just as he was trying to comprehend the meaning behind Dongwang the Great's smile, the defense surrounding him suddenly vanished. The next thing he knew, his sword had pierced right through Dongwang the Great. Complete silence reigned in the area beneath the divine throne in front of the heavenly palace. Yi Futian looked at the spear in his hand that had pierced through Dongwang the Great's body, and an extremely shocked expression surfaced in his eyes. He slowly lifted his head to look at Dongwang the Great. Why? He asked. He just could not understand. No, don't! A voice cried out, and a beautiful figure appeared at the side. It was Dongwang Diyuan. Yi Futian looked toward her. He found the look in Dongwang Diyuan's eyes to be familiar. It was similar to the sorrowful expression on his face when he was playing the divine requiem. All this while, Dongwang Diyuan had been an enigma that he could not fully understand. At times, she would act haughtily and even go to the extent of purposely humiliating him. Her high and mighty attitude reeked of arrogance. Yet, on a few occasions he somehow had the feeling that Dongwang Diyuan was harboring a deep secret. Behind her, the two great empresses hovered in the air. Their gazes also fell on Yi Futian and were gentle. Surprisingly, there were even tears in them. Why? Yi Futian looked toward Dongwang Diyuan and asked. He felt that everyone seemed to know something that only he did not. Dongwang the Great naturally knew about it, and so did Dongwang Diyuan. Even the great empresses at the back knew. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. I heard from Diyuan that when you were 16, you could run about freely in the mountainside. Back then, you were just an innocent young lad, free of any care or worry, Dongwang the Great suddenly said. His voice was soft, and he was smiling gently at Yi Futian. After that, you followed Hua Fenglu to Qinzhou and found a teacher at a cottage. You met Little Du, then went to the Eastern Barren Territory and entered the palace. You went through near-death experiences and many other things before you made it out of the 9 states and met Emperor Xia. It has been hard on you all these years. Yi Futian's heart beat wildly. Was it because he was the descendant of Emperor Yi Qin? Was Dongwang the Great planning to eradicate all possible future threats to himself just in case? This was beyond ridiculous. Dongwang the Great knew about everything after all. He was aware of every single thing that had taken place in those years. Little Du. What exactly was Mr. Du's real identity then? Please withdraw the spear, Dongwang Diyuan pleaded. Her beautiful eyes were also filled with tears as she looked at Yi Futian. Yi Futian felt numb, and his mind whirled. Suddenly, many memories surfaced in his mind, They were so numerous that he could not place them correctly. But he still withdrew his spear. The destructive power of his spear had done significant damage to Dong Wang the Great after all. Yet Dong Wang the Great only smiled and turned around to walk back up the flight of stairs. He then merely sat there. At that moment, he did not look like a great emperor that oversaw the whole world, but more like an ordinary middle-aged man, or a benevolent elder. I know you probably have many questions. For you to fully understand, we need to go back to when it all started, 500 years ago, Dong Wang the Great said as he gazed at Futian. In that period, there was hardly any law or order, and as a result, wars and conflicts were never ending. Things were terrible where the original realm was previously located. Countless people died from the wars that broke out year after year, resulting in the destruction of cultivators in the original realm. Emperor Qing and I had long desired to end the chaos but were sadly limited by our abilities. We were unable to achieve the outcome we badly wanted until we met her. When Dong Wang the Great mentioned her, his eyes were filled with absolute gentleness and a quiet sense of admiration. The ruler of the divine prefecture and one of the 6 great emperors was filled with admiration when talking about his wife. One could only imagine how exceptional she must have been. There will never be anyone like her in this world anymore. Dong Wang the Great sighed, and his gentle expression suddenly became solemn. He looked at Futian and continued. She was the daughter of the heavenly emperor. When he died, the heaven realm entered an era of darkness. However, the orphan the heavenly emperor left behind was the most remarkable lady in all of history. She was born to be the sovereign princess and had no equal. Futian suddenly felt like his heart had been hit by something and was beating furiously. Supreme Sword Lord had said the same sentence before. She was born to be the sovereign princess and had no equal. When she died, the world lost much of its splendor. Yet now, Dong Wang the Great was saying the same thing. Of course, the two of them were not on the same level. Dong Wang the Great was someone who was standing at the top of the world. She was an absolute idealist. Even after achieving emperor level, she refused to become the heavenly emperor but quietly continued cultivating instead. She discovered that the battle of the old heavenly path that had caused the disintegration of the heavenly path and the loss of law and order in the world did not make the world a better place. Conversely, after the path of the emperors was severed, cultivators started to madly clamor over the cultivation resources in a bid to enter the emperor plane. The few great emperors left in the world chose to hide to protect their interests. They wanted to rule the world by themselves and become the ruler over all things, making it so that the laws in the world would function according to their wishes. Thus, she was keen on rebuilding the heavenly path and restoring the path of the emperors so that all the cultivators in the world would have a chance of becoming an emperor. She was even willing to help others prove their paths. It was at that time that Emperor Qing and I first met her. Futian was taken aback. The sovereign princess had wanted to rebuild the heavenly path and restore the path of the emperors. What was more, the reason Dong Wang the Great and Emperor Qing could become emperors was related to her. Going by what Dong Wang the Great said, it was only with her help that they could ultimately prove their paths and enter the emperor plane. In addition, all that Dong Wang the Great did for the divine prefecture afterward, which included reviving martial arts and allowing all the people in the world to practice cultivation, was likely also in accordance with her will. Therefore, to Dong Wang the Great, she was not merely his wife. Dong Wang the Great resumed speaking. With her help, Emperor Qing and I conquered and united the divine prefecture. We also won the battle of the original realm and attained the authority to rule over the original realm. She then sealed off the original realm so that it would be isolated from the other realms and protected from intrusions. 500 years ago, how had Dong Wang the Great and Emperor Qing won the battle of the original realm when they had just become great emperors? Now he knew that it was because she was behind them. Were the Buddhists willing to help him also because of this? Because of this, the original realm was peaceful for hundreds of years. Everything was progressing well. She was on her way to achieving her goals. Yet, it also brought on a calamity. Dong Wang the Great's eyes suddenly turned cold. He continued, "At that time, the heaven realm was the strongest out of all the realms in the world, and the heavenly emperor was also the most powerful out of all the great emperors. Yet he suddenly passed on. It was only later on, when she continuously tried to rebuild the heavenly path, that she found out that she wasn't the only one with the same thought. However, the other party, in reality, had no intention to rebuild it but to replace it instead. He became the ruler of the whole world himself. It was also because of this that the heavenly emperor died. After she foresaw the dangers that were approaching, she understood that there were some things she was no longer able to complete, so she hoped to find someone who could inherit her will and fulfill it. Sadly, either Emperor Yi Qing nor I possessed the capabilities to do so, and thus, a new plan was created, Dongwang the Great said as he looked intently at Yi Futian. At that moment, Yi Futian's heart convulsed sharply. His whole mind was blank, and he felt as if he had stopped, frozen in time. Even the spear in his hands was quivering. This world was a chessboard, but who were the pawns, and who were the players? Now, finally, he knew. The spear in Yi Futian's hand disappeared, and his mind was in complete chaos. The heavenly path had been remade into the ancient tree of the world. No wonder the ancient tree of the world could perceive all the divine items, for it contained the power of the source. So, he was that person in that new plan who remade the heavenly path. It seemed that everything was indeed predestined. A long time seemed to have passed before Yi Futian turned his attention to Dongwang the Great, extremely mixed emotions in his eyes. The daughter of the emperor was the wife of Dongwang the Great. Therefore, the truth about his birth that he had been searching for so long turned out to be right in front of him. The enemy of whom he had been so wary of was his biological father. The master of the divine prefecture was his biological father, but he had been living in the shadow of the divine prefecture all this time, which seemed like cruel irony. Yi Futian suddenly laughed, and the laughter seemed a little sarcastic. He did not know who or what he was laughing at. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. This kind of ending was something he had never considered possible. Although he had anticipated countless possibilities, he never expected this would be it. He didn't have a choice, said a voice from his side, which attracted Yi Futian's attention. He turned and saw Dongwang Diyuan with tears on her face, looking particularly sorrowful. It looked as if she had endured a lot as well. No one had any choice in this matter, they were all fighting for the same thing. If you were the one being left behind, they would surely have discovered you. For this ideal, many chose to sacrifice themselves, including my father, said Dongwang Diyuan, looking at Yi Futian. Yi Futian's heart skipped a beat as he looked at Dongwang Diyuan. Your father, he murmured, was Emperor Yi Qing. Yes. Dongwang Diyuan nodded. Yi Futian remembered when Emperor Yi Qing cried when he saw him. Finally, he understood that the moment Emperor Yi Qing saw his spiritual soul, he had already known who Yi Futian was. His parents, one was the brother of Emperor Yi Qing, and the other was someone whom Emperor Yi Qing admired the most. No wonder you are unparalleled in strength. You have been bathed in the power of the ancestral phoenix since you were a child. When the relics of the 8 legions appeared, you chose to inherit the power of the Naga with the ancestral dragon and the ancestral phoenix to protect you. Yi Futian seemed to be murmuring to himself. So, in the heaven realm, the divine demon diagram that appeared under the heavenly path was not for me, but you. Dongwang Diyuan did not answer. Of course, she knew it was for her, but she did not fight for it. His action was a silent acknowledgement that it belonged to Yi Futian. Ever since my father's death, Dongwang Imperial Palace was under surveillance. Therefore everything that the Imperial Palace did seemed to be to get rid of all traces left behind by my father. But in fact, it was to cover up your existence. He had no choice. Over the years, he was enduring all this by himself. Dongwang Diyuan was worried that Yi Futian would resent Dongwang the Great. It turned out that it was because of him that Emperor Yi Qing became taboo in the divine prefecture, and all traces of him had been erased. In the end, even the city of Qingzhou, where he grew up, had disappeared entirely. Therefore, his godfather, who was also behind the scenes, was a key player. No wonder his godfather always told him that he was born to be an emperor ever since he was young. It turned out that it was indeed destiny. From the moment he was born, he would either die or inherit the throne. So, the world of Buddhism participated as well, Futian said. Back then, when I was not yet an emperor, I had gone to the world of Buddhism to cultivate, and it was your mother who asked me to go. She and the Lord of all Buddhas had discussed Buddhism together. Even the Buddha was incredibly respectful and taught me elimination of outflows, one of the 6 superpowers. Dongwang the Great said. This is the highest Buddhist method in Buddhism, and it is not to be passed on to anyone lightly. Apart from the Buddha of Destiny, the Medicine Buddha Lord, and a very few other highly respected great Buddhas also know the truth. Futian thought of the aggressive attitude of the Medicine Buddha Lord and what the Buddha of Destiny called the 500-year reign. It turned out that all this was done to distract everyone else. After all, at that time, Futian had already begun to reveal his talent and became one of the most enchanting genius talents in the world, catching the attention of several great emperors. Everyone is covering up your existence to buy more time for you, Dongwang Diyuan said. Then why are they not covering it up now? Futian asked. There was no way to hide it any longer, especially after you killed the 7 emperors with your spear. Both the human ancestor and the devil emperor have become suspicious. Although they could not confirm it, they started to have doubts about your existence. Dongwang Diyuan continued. That was why the human ancestor invited you to the human divine palace to see if you would go and invited you to participate in the war. Besides, they had arranged for a great emperor to get inside the Yi imperial palace, and could use the people in the palace to threaten you if there was anything out of the ordinary. Futian suddenly put 2 and 2 together when he heard Dongwang Diyuan's words. What he didn't understand at the time was now crystal clear. It was precisely because he did not know anything that the human ancestor didn't detect anything out of the ordinary. Nonetheless, he was very much guarded as far as Futian was concerned. The same held true for the Devil Emperor. No wonder he felt that the Devil Emperor was behaving a little strangely. Not long ago, the Devil Emperor ordered the cultivators from the Devil Imperial Palace to intercept him and prevent him from entering Dongwang Imperial Palace. Obviously, after the Devil Emperor fought against Dongwang the Great, and after the Great Emperor he dispatched to Yi Imperial Palace was killed, he sensed that something was wrong. Dongwang the Great's order of attack on Yi Imperial Palace was not meant to threaten Futian with the people in Yi Imperial Palace. On the contrary, it was to bring these people to Dongwang Imperial Palace so that Futian had nothing to worry about in the future. At this moment, the divine power that sealed this space disappeared, and many people stepped on the stairs to come here. They stood far away behind him, watching Futian. Futian turned his head back to look at them and saw they were his elders who had been brought to Dongwang Imperial Palace. At this time, they were strongly impacted by the turn of events and were shocked. Especially Hua Fenglu, who felt as if he was in a dream. He was the first person to know Futian's secret and knew that he was related to Emperor Yi Qing, but what he could never expect was that Futian was the son of the master of the Divine Prefecture. In the crowd, Futian saw a familiar figure he hadn't seen for a long time, Mr. Du from the cottage. He was also here, looking at him with a smile, but there were tears in that smile. He also saw the man he had been calling father, Yi Baichuan, and the family he knew. They were all here. Everything that Dongwang the Great and Dongwang Diyuan had been saying was the answer he sought. Boy, it's been a long time. Yi Baichuan looked at Futian and said with a smile. Futian didn't know how to respond. Was he resentful? Of course there was some of that. But after knowing the truth and seeing those familiar faces in front of him, he couldn't muster up any hatred. Dongwang the Great sat there watching everything and showed a rare smile. No matter what, it was a reunion of sorts. He slowly got up and walked towards the top of the stairs. At this moment, he no longer resembled an unparalleled great emperor but more like an old man who had gone through a lot in life. He has endured too much over the years. The prophecy predicted by the Buddha of Destiny was about to be fulfilled. Dongwang the Great walked to the divine throne, but instead of sitting down, he faced forward and took a deep breath. The 500-year reign of Dongwang the Great was coming to an end. From today on, It would be the era of the new emperor. Outside the Dongwang Imperial Palace, many top figures in the Divine Prefecture had gathered. The cultivators of the 18 domains, and the great emperors from the ancient god clans, such as several great emperors who had grievances with Yi Futian, were all looking inside, wondering if a conclusion had been reached. This time, Yi Futian had so boldly stepped into the imperial palace. Perhaps it would be the end for him. It was high time for Yi Futian to fall. Likewise, the Devil Emperor did not leave, but he was not able to enter Dongwang Imperial Palace. He wanted to know the answer badly because this matter involved one of his closest relatives. As he gave a glance into the distance, at the highest point of Dongwang Imperial Palace, the Devil Emperor whispered, "Is the truth about to be revealed?" He seemed to be talking to himself, but it was also as if he was asking the Buddha, who was in front of him. The Buddha did not respond but stood there, quiet. At this moment, someone walked out of Dongwang Imperial Palace. The Devil Emperor was not surprised when he saw this man, as if he was expecting him. On the other hand, Yusheng sharpened his eyes, and there was a strong sense of shock. What was happening? Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. The man walked with purpose until he approached the Devil Emperor. The two men stared into each other's eyes, each assessing the other. "You've come," the Devil Emperor uttered in a low voice. At this moment, his voice sounded extraordinarily calm. The man looked at the Devil Emperor briefly, then directed his attention to Yusheng behind him. "What's going on?" Yusheng asked, his voice slightly trembling. His father was the man who walked out of Dongwang Imperial Palace. Who would tell him what happened? The man who appeared was none other than Yusheng's own father, Yi Futian's godfather, and the younger brother of the Devil Emperor of the Devil World, also known as a traitor to the Devil World. "Yusheng, you have done very well over the years," his father said to him. "As for the reason behind all this, you will know soon enough." The Devil Emperor had a sarcastic look when he heard these words, and it was not clear who he was mocking. He stared at his younger brother, who was in front of him, and said, "So, Dongwang has never betrayed his beliefs, and he did not betray Emperor Yi Qing. Dongwang Duyuan is just a decoy, isn't that right?" What a great conspiracy. Even the likes of him had been kept in the dark. Although he had his doubts, he still felt that Yi Futian must be in the role of an avenger. It wasn't until recently that he began to wonder about Yi Futian's real identity, hence the battle of the 6 emperors. He thought everything would come to an end and that Yi Futian's identity would change nothing no matter what it was. But the battle of the 6 emperors could not end this era. And Yi Futian stepped into Donghuang Imperial Palace. When he saw no response from the man, the Devil Emperor continued, "Who are you loyal to? Dongwang, Emperor Yi Qing, or both of them?" "Neither," Yusheng's father replied. The Devil Emperor was stunned for a moment. Then, he laughed as if he understood something. He remarked, "I see. I didn't expect her to have such power over you all, connecting you. The Divine, the Buddha, and the Devil have all participated. She was a remarkable woman indeed." The Divine, naturally, referred to the Divine Prefecture, Dongwang the Great, and Emperor Yi Qing. The Buddha, of course, referred to the world of Buddhism, the Lord of all Buddhas. The Devil was his own brother. They had no connection and may have even been on the opposite sides. But they ended up here together because they had stayed true to the same belief. It was all because of her that they were under the command of Dongwang the Great and Emperor Yi Qing. They are loyal to their own beliefs, the Buddha added from the side. "Belief?" the Devil Emperor said sarcastically. "Look at the state the world is in, and what difference does it make? You care and pity the world, but who will pity you? For the sake of the so-called world, you can abandon your own people, betray your own flesh and blood, and kill your own clan. In his eyes, was your son even ever your own? Who is Yusheng in your eyes?" The Devil Emperor fixed on his brother and continued pressing. "Have you ever felt guilty about this, asking the heir of the Devil World, your own child, to be loyal to the others and serve another?" Hearing all this, Yusheng naturally understood something. So, was this the truth? He, who had never been moved by anything, trembled at this moment. He looked at his own father. As strong as he had been, at this moment, his eyes were fragile. This was his father. Yu Sheng. His father looked at him. Never forget the beliefs you hold dear to you, and don't forget everything that you too have experienced. The Devil Emperor suddenly laughed sarcastically. Indeed, in your eyes, Yu Sheng is nothing more than a pawn born to serve. The Devil Emperor continued sarcastically. What kind of spell did she put on you to make all of you agree to do this? Images appeared in his mind, and his cold heart felt some warmth at this moment. There was a strong admiration that could be detected in those dark eyes of his. Her magic could only be known by those who had come in contact with her and those who knew her. She was a person who was pure to the extreme, someone who thought only of the others, with no pretense whatsoever. For her ideas and her beliefs, he could sacrifice everything, even his own life. After she fell, Futian became his belief. Therefore, he considered himself a slave. Futian was the one who would take over her scepter and realize her will. Devil Emperor. At this moment the Buddha, who was on the other side, said, "The world needs a change. If someone supreme is to emerge, everything in the devil world can also be changed, and the devil's abyss will be emptied. Are you trying to convince me?" The Devil Emperor looked at the Buddha and said, "If people in the world have reached the state of supremacy in cultivation, how do you expect them to remember their original intentions? Power corrupts all. When you have control over the world, everything will naturally operate according to your will. The heavenly path in ancient times were as such, and it will be no exception in the future. That's your belief, not mine. You don't understand her, and you understand Dongwon even less," the Buddha said. "Buddhism sympathizes with the world and wants to educate all beings. But were there any fewer scumbags in Buddhism than in any other sect? Why can't Buddhism educate one's own?" asked the Devil Emperor most sarcastically. "Nothing you said is wrong, but there are always some people who are different. She was part of the past. Let's put her aside for the time being. However, do you understand Dongwon himself?" asked the Buddha. "A coward like Ji Wudao alleged, or a determined person who endured humiliation and burdened with doing what's right?" the Devil Emperor retorted mockingly. "Among the 6 superpowers of Buddhism, omniscient and elimination of outflows are the most difficult to cultivate. In terms of the prerequisites for cultivation, elimination of outflows has the most stringent requirement," the Buddha said slowly. "Do you know what kind of people may cultivate the elimination of outflows? The Buddha said that when all karma is cut off, those who are no longer bound by life and death may cultivate the elimination of outflows. People in this state of mind have long since ceased to consider their own life and death, no longer coveting anything for themselves. Only by putting all this aside can he accomplish the elimination of outflows. Today, everything that Dongwon did was for that belief. So, does this mean that the Buddha is selfish inside?" The Devil Emperor was unmoved. "Amitabha." The Buddha clasped his hands together and said, "I'm ashamed to say that I work for merit. Seeing one's nature by discovering one's heart. The Buddha is blunt enough." The Devil Emperor responded coldly. Just as they were speaking, a splendid divine light radiated from Dongwon Imperial Palace, covering the entire boundless void and quickly spreading to the entire imperial city. The Devil Emperor looked up over there, just as all the cultivators in the imperial city looked in the same direction. The domain chiefs' manners of the 18 domains in the divine prefecture, and those ancient emperors focused their attention there. There, they seemed to see the figure of Dongwon the Great, who stood in front of the divine throne, bathed in divine glory as he faced the world. From today onward, Futian will inherit the throne of the divine prefecture and will be titled Futian the Great. He will be the new emperor who will rule all of the divine prefecture," said a voice that came from the Dongwon Imperial Palace, ringing throughout the land of the divine prefecture. Dongwon had abdicated. And now, a new emperor was born. The land of the divine prefecture and the 18 domains were located on an infinite continent, where many living beings resided. All of them looked up into the sky to hear that voice resounding above the firmament. It sounded as if it came from outside the world. The voice was that of Dongwang the Great. This voice was like thunder, and no matter what any cultivator was doing on the mainland of the Divine Prefecture, they stopped at this moment. Their hearts trembled violently. At this moment, the entire Divine Prefecture was greeted by a moment of absolute silence. No one spoke, no one cultivated, and no one fought. But after a brief moment of dead silence, there was an uproar. What was happening? Dongwang the Great had abdicated his throne and gave it to Yi Futian. As far as they knew, not so long ago, the human ancestor, along with the Devil Emperor, the Evil Emperor, and the Dark Sovereign, launched an attack on the Divine Prefecture. Yi Futian had also led the forces from Yi Imperial Palace to participate. They didn't understand why there would be such a huge change. Now, Yi Futian was about to inherit the throne of the Divine Prefecture. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. There were some unknown factors behind Emperor Yi Qing's death back then. Dongwang the Great had no choice but to do what he did. But what could be the reason for him to pass the throne on to Yi Futian? Or did Dongwang the Great, out of guilt, return the throne to the rightful heir of Emperor Yi Qing? Numerous people were speculating and talking. This thunderbolt had stunned everyone and turned their world upside down so that they couldn't react for a while. Everything was happening so fast that no one expected it. The sky is changing! Someone marveled as they looked at the sky. In the Divine Prefecture, the sky had changed. It was just the Divine Prefecture, but perhaps the whole era was about to change. The transition of power this time in the Divine Prefecture was more than what met the eye. If the cultivators in the 18 domains of the Divine Prefecture were shocked to this degree, one could only imagine the reactions from the cultivators inside Dongwang Imperial Palace at the moment. The core members inside Dongwang Imperial Palace were shocked by this voice, including even the direct disciples of Dongwang the Great himself. Countless people looked up at the highest point of the Imperial Palace, and they were speechless. However, after a while, a few elders showed a look of sudden realization. It was no wonder Yi Futian was able to survive until now. Some of the doubts in their hearts were cleared up at this moment. Nonetheless, some did not look so pleased. For example, the 4 ancient emperors of the 4 ancient god clans. Haotian the Great, Yuanshi the Great, Wuliang the Great, and the heavenly Emperor Jiang all paled. No wonder Dongwang the Great had allowed Yi Futian to roam upon the land and Divine Prefecture doing whatever he wanted. At this moment, the truth dawned upon them, and they realized everything was over for them. Everything was over. They did not get to see Yi Futian's death as they wanted. Instead, they were witnessing his inheriting the throne of the Divine Prefecture. This time, they didn't even have a chance to resist. Not only them, but some had made life difficult for Yi Futian in the 18 domains, such as the Domain Chief of the West Sea Domain and the Domain Chief of Shangqing Domain. It was true that they had greatly improved their strengths, but before Yi Futian they were nothing. More importantly, now that Yi Futian was to inherit the throne, they would be under his command. This was some devastating news to them. The Devil Emperor raised his head and looked in the direction of Dongwang the Great. Suddenly he laughed. He remembered the last time he came to Dongwang Imperial Palace to get some information from Dongwang the Great. They had chatted while Yi Futian was fighting Haotian the Great and Yuanshi the Great at the same time. He asked Dongwang the Great about Yi Futian, and Dongwang the Great admitted that he had bested Yi Futian. Later, he asked Dongwang if he felt guilty enough to return the throne to Emperor Yi Qing's heir. Dongwang the Great replied that there was some guilt, but not what he initially thought. Indeed, things were more intriguing and interesting than the Devil Emperor had imagined. It could be said that it had not ceased to surprise him. For this day, you people planned for 200 years, and Emperor Yi Qing was willing to die for it. This is your belief, the Devil Emperor said with mockery in his eyes. Even Yu Xing is no more than just a part of your plan, a mere tool. You mean to tell me that everything was done only to assist Yi Futian? Yu Xing looked at his father. What the Devil Emperor said was indeed what his father had told all along ever since he was young. He was born for Yi Futian, born to be a general to assist Yi Futian. At this moment, he was rather hoping for a different answer. No. His father looked at Yu Xing and continued. Of course not. Yu Xing will be the creator of history. He will become the controller of the future orders between heaven and earth, ruling over all the demons in the world. Futian has always treated him like a brother. Is that so? The Devil Emperor's eyes were full of sarcasm, and those dark eyes seemed to see through everything. He said, "Someone who was born with a mission, only born to fulfill your beliefs. If he is not a pawn of yours, then what do you call him? As for ruling over the demons in the world, he can do that himself without bowing down and surrendering to anyone else." Yu Xing's father didn't argue. He had lied to appease Yu Xing. What the Devil Emperor said was right. Yu Xing was born with a purpose. But it was not just Yu Xing, but Dong Wang Duan too. They were both born to help Yi Futian. This reality would be cruel for Yu Xing to accept, but some things must be accepted despite the personal sacrifice. Even Emperor Yi Qing was willing to die for it. The blood of demons has always flowed inside of you, and for a cold-blooded and ruthless man like you to fulfill your beliefs no matter the cost, her influence on you must have been extraordinary, the Devil Emperor remarked in a low voice. He was truly curious to know what kind of person the Dark Sovereign was that she could make Dong Wang the Great, Emperor Yi Qing, and his own younger brother work together to do her bidding. Having said that, the Devil Emperor turned around and said, "Let's go." Yu Xing looked at his father and hesitated for a few moments. Then he, too, turned around and followed the Devil Emperor. Watching Yu Xing's departing figure, his father did not show the slightest sign of worry. He knew that Yu Xing hated him and had hated him since he was a youth. Yu Xing could hate him, and he was willing to bear all the hatred from Yu Xing. But over the years, he had come to realize one thing: no matter how much Yu Xing hated him, when Yi Futian appeared in front of Yu Xing would make his own decision. Some people were impossible for him to hate. He turned around and walked inside Dongwang Imperial Palace. At this time, inside Dongwang Imperial Palace, there were already many people heading in that direction. They were on their way to greet the new emperor. Beneath the divine throne was Yi Futian. He raised his head to look at Dongwang the Great, who was on the stairs. Even at this moment, he still hadn't recovered. Everything that happened was too shocking for him. Over the past 200 years, he was living in a gigantic web of lies. Dongwang the Great wanted to use that strike to make up for his guilt towards Yi Futian. But he knew that it was not his fault. So whose fault was it? Dongwang the Great stood quietly next to the divine throne, not urging him. He looked at him calmly, waiting for Yi Futian to step onto the divine throne that belonged to him. "Is she still around?" Yi Futian asked as he looked up at Dongwang the Great. Naturally, Dongwang the Great knew very well who Yi Futian was referring to. "Yes, she is always around, waiting for you. You have already met her," Emperor Dongwang said as he returned Yi Futian's gaze. They had met. Yi Futian appeared thoughtful. Many images flashed across his mind at this very moment. More than 200 years ago, the Sovereign Princess, his mother, had a premonition of the dangers ahead, which accounted for the events that took place later. Subsequently, the Sovereign Princess herself had fallen. But now, Dongwang the Great claimed that she had always been around. In fact, Yi Futian had already met her. Then, there could only be one possibility remaining, and that was she had been existing in the world in another form. "No wonder there is the resonance," Yi Futian secretly marveled, looking at Dongwang the Great. "The 99th heaven in heaven realm, that slice of the heavenly path." Dongwang the Great nodded. "In the days of yore, she made her heavenly path into an ancient tree that allowed all things to grow. Later, she sent the spirit of the heavenly path into your body, which became your spiritual soul, to accompany you in your growth always. She transformed herself into an imperfect heavenly path to existing in the world. This was to avoid the suspicions of the others. No wonder the 6 emperors did not enter," Yi Futian murmured. Everyone knew that the heavenly path possessed a spiritual consciousness, or else it would not have yielded divine items as it did. But Yi Futian never dreamt that the consciousness of the heavenly path would be his mother, the most superior woman in the world. Nobody could even come close to her. Yi Futian felt a pang of sadness in his chest at this moment. It turned out that they had met already. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. So, Ji Wudao is also a pawn? Yi Futian said. Yes. Dongwang the Great nodded. Ji Wudao has always been part of the plan. Like Du Yuan and Yu Xing, they are the future rulers of the order between heaven and earth. At the same time, they are also used as distractions so that the rest of them may confuse Ji Wudao as the one who covets heaven. In fact, in recent years, this is exactly what everyone thought. And it's not just the world, even Ji Wudao himself thinks so as well. His growth has far exceeded anyone's expectations. Ji Wudao has completed the cultivation of the chaotic heavenly swallowing method, a terrifying divine method that can devour the abilities of the others, absorbing them as his own. More precisely, Ji Wudao can be described as a pawn that has escaped the chessboard. Dongwang the Great continued. If he is under control, then even if he inherited the throne of the Heavenly Emperor, he can still be used by you. If he is no longer under control, he can be replaced instead. Futian, you are the true Heavenly Emperor. Yi Futian did not feel happy when he heard what Dongwang the Great had told him. On the contrary, he felt a sense of sadness. Dongwang, Du Yuan, Yu Xing, and Ji Wudao were all about the same age as he was. So this was the truth, all of them were born for the same goal, and all of them were pawns in this game, played between heaven and earth. But Dongwang the Great had changed the game. For his safety, he and Dongwang Du Yuan switched their identities, which even Emperor Yi Qing didn't know. That was the reason why Emperor Yi Qing was so sorrowful after looking into his spiritual soul. Everyone was born for his sake. How sad was this for Dongwang Du Yuan, Yu Xing and Ji Wudao. So Chenny was too. Yi Futian thought of what happened at the Great Bright Domain in the land of 18 domains, which ended with Blind Chen's death. Now it seemed that only Dongwang the Great could have staged all this. Dongwang the Great nodded and asked, Do you have any other questions? What about Qing Yao? Yi Futian asked. She is not part of this. Dongwang the Great nodded. Yi Qing Yao was an accident. The child of darkness was not part of the plan. What about the teacher? Yi Futian asked again. The teacher is an unusual man, said Dongwang the Great. Some things were done because I asked the teacher to do them. Yi Futian nodded. Then, it was not surprising that he was the one in charge of Four Corner Village. So, was such a massive plan, who is the enemy? Yi Futian finally asked. Who can make her perish? And why did Emperor Yi Qing have to die? And even Emperor Yi Qing's whole faction was wiped out? 300 years after the unification of the Divine Prefecture, the civil war between the two emperors erupted, resulting in the entire faction of Emperor Yi Qing being obliterated. It was said that there was so much blood they formed into rivers in that battle, and it was not just Emperor Yi Qing who was killed. It was commonly believed that numerous great demons had been immolated in that battle, which created a huge gap in the demon realm. It might even be that only a few core people knew the truth and died willingly. The majority of them remained ignorant and became collateral damages to the plan. For those people, it was unbelievably cruel. Once, they were the founders of the Divine Prefecture, but they were purged ruthlessly. Dongwang the Great had a complicated expression on his face when he heard Yi Futian's questions. This was also the pain he felt in his heart for many years, which he had been unwilling to face. If he had a choice, he rather that it was him who died. Let me answer for him, a voice said. Yi Futian turned around and saw a familiar figure coming towards them. When Yi Futian saw the man, his heart trembled slightly, but he couldn't manage to address the man as he used to. At this time, he was no longer a hunched-over old man. An icy aura permeated from him, and his eyes were cold to the core, tinged with cruelty. Those eyes looked at Yi Futian. Your mother wanted to remake the order of the world and end the era of chaos. But the best way to change the world is to directly gain control over the world. Many years ago, she had already predicted the outcome, so the plan had been in place even before she fell. The only difference was that the plan was not as extensive at the time, and only some things were being done. It wasn't until her fall that the plan started to take shape. As for her death, we still haven't figured out who the enemy was. But as far as we know, it's very possibly the human ancestor. Of course, it would not be the one that you saw today. Yi Futian's godfather looked at Yi Futian as he continued to explain. But in the battle back then, the enemy was gravely injured as well and fell into a deep sleep. The human ancestor you see today is most likely just the other spokesperson in the world. Yi Futian was extremely shocked inside. The human ancestor was known as the ancestor of the human realm, in charge of the world order. Could something like this have been hidden so deeply within his background? After your mother fell, the enemies still refused to give up and forbade the existence of two emperors in the divine prefecture. They joined forces with the dark world, the devil world, and the empty divine realm to start a war, intending to destroy the divine prefecture. Because of that, a civil war between the two emperors erupted, and the divine prefecture separated from the heaven realm. This was a tragically costly price to paralyze our opponent. At that time, the other also had concerns of their own, so the battle was a lose-lose situation. Our enemies did not dare to fully expose themselves, for they worried about the forces of the devil world and other principalities, so things eventually calmed down in consideration of everything and all parties. However, they had never relented in keeping tabs on Donghuang Imperial Palace. As a result, Donghuang Imperial Palace cleared the remaining power of Emperor Yi Qing as a way to buy us 200 more years. If we didn't sacrifice a faction, and if the other party spares no expense, the divine prefecture may have ceased to exist a long time ago. Now, the world has changed dramatically. The age of the gods was upon us, and the human ancestor had already begun using his hidden prowess. This was also an indication that the real player may be returning, so we are in a race of time. After you ascend to the throne, the tasks that your mother could not complete will fall upon you. Having said that, he knelt on both knees and prostrated under the stairs. He kowtowed to Yi Futian and said, "Your servant Yu Tu beseeches the young master to ascend the throne. The heavenly path is dead, and Futian shall rule." Yu Tu's voice was not loud but a little low, not revealing any excitement. It was, however, full of expectation for Yi Futian. Now, for them, they were still mired in crisis. Yu Tu knew how strong she was, but despite her strength, she had not been able to fulfill her wish. Until today, in the dawn of the age of the gods, something unusual had been stirred up inside the human divine palace. The great Buddhas in the world of Buddhism had detected something also, and everything pointed that he may be soon returning. This was a fight for the heavens, and the price of failure was death. "Godfather, please get up," Yi Futian said as Yu Tu got up. Yi Futian looked at Yu Tu and then at Donghuang Diyuan and many other faces. The cultivators from Yi Imperial Palace had heard the truth of everything, and they could find no words at the moment. Everything that had just been revealed to them had a meaningful impact on them, and Emperor Xiao was filled with emotion. Fate had pushed him forward, and he had arrived at this point only to discover that everything was not as he thought. 200 years of understanding was overturned in an instant. The severity of the impact on Yi Futian could only be imagined. Naturally, he found everything challenging to bear at the moment. Yi Futian turned around and directed his attention at Donghuang the Great again. He looked at his wound and said, "If I had known the truth then, I might have jabbed it a little harder. You can jab one more time if you want." Donghuang the Great didn't seem to care as he responded. He owed this debt, and he was indebted to too many people. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. You are so eager to give up your throne because you don't want to sit on it, Yi Futian said. Sitting on the divine throne will only make you feel guilty, so you want to give it to me directly. Donghuang the Great was silent. Indeed, he too had endured much over the years. If that's the case, why should I spare you? Yi Futian said. You are not that old, and you are still one of the strongest emperors out of the 6 in the world. Why do you want to surrender? This position does not belong only to you but also to Emperor Yi Qing. Yes, this throne is yours to suffer. Yi Futian did not want to sit on the throne of the divine prefecture. More importantly, even if the throne is to be passed on in the future, it should be passed on to her. Yi Futian looked at Donghuang Diyuan. Donghuang Diyuan was stunned, looking at Yi Futian with surprise. She knew that Dongwang the Great had been waiting for the day when Yi Futian would step into the imperial palace of the divine prefecture. While he wished that Yi Futian could come here as soon as possible, he also hoped that he would not come here too quickly so that his realm could continue to be elevated. The throne of the divine prefecture had always been reserved for him. Dongwang the Great felt he had a lot to make up to him. Dongwang the Great was also a little surprised. As he looked at Yi Futian, Futian continued, "The name that has been used for 200 years can't be changed by a few of your words. Don't you agree?" When he heard this, Dongwang the Great understood Yi Futian's meaning. He took a deep breath, and a feeling of warmth flowed through him. "No, you will still use the name Yi," Dongwang the Great said. "The throne of the divine prefecture will be passed on to Diyuan. Dongwang Diyuan. Then it's settled." Yi Futian nodded and then said, "Should I go see her?" "Go. She has been waiting for you for a long time," Dongwang the Great said with a smile. Yi Futian replied. Then he disappeared directly from where he was and left just like that, leaving everyone behind. Under the stairs, everyone from Dongwang Imperial Palace was about to come and meet the new emperor, but the new emperor had left. Even Yu Tu looked stunned as he froze in place. That's right. They must remember Yi Futian was no longer the boy of yesterday. When Yu Tu thought of this, he let out a sigh. At this moment, he seemed to age a lot all of a sudden. "Please go back," Dongwang the Great said to those who had come for an audience. Divine glory was shining over him, and before anyone figured out what was going on, they retreated. However, they saw the smile in the eyes of Dongwang the Great. The cultivator in Dongwang Imperial Palace had never seen such a smile on the great emperor, ever. This smile seemed to be a kind, calm honesty mixed with relief. It was as if he had finally been released of a burden. Heaven Realm, the 99th heaven, above the heavenly palace. Ji Wudao opened his eyes as he stood up slowly, looking up into the sky. In his eyes there was a touch of extremely complicated emotions. Previously, he had gone to the human divine palace, intending to take advantage of the battle of the 6 emperors and hunt down the cultivators from the human divine palace. Later, when several great emperors emerged from human divine palace, he retreated after being defeated and returned here to cultivate. However, not too long ago, he got a message from the divine prefecture. Dongwang the Great wanted to pass on the throne to Yi Futian. He suddenly understood many things at that moment, such as why the original realm had produced such a proud son of heaven, and why he had always felt that something was lacking in Dongwang Diyuan. At this moment, all his doubts were answered. Dongwang Diyuan was not her descendant after all. Yi Futian was creating his own micro-heavenly path, Ji Wudao exclaimed in a low voice. Above the heavenly palace, quite a few people stared at Ji Wudao from behind. They could feel that something was different about Ji Wudao at this time, but exactly what was different about him, they couldn't say. Did something happen? In the years past, I have traveled to many places, trying to find out what happened back then and finally gotten to know some of it. In my opinion, Dongwang is just a coward. Not only did he abandon you, but also he severed his relationship with the heaven realm to protect himself, which caused the war with Emperor Yi. Ji Wudao looked at the firmament, as if talking to himself. I also found out that the human ancestor was the most likely suspect behind what happened back then. Therefore, I have always regarded the human realm as the enemy and aimed to destroy the human realm. One day, when I prove the way and achieve great success, I will destroy the human divine palace, execute the human ancestor, and find the person responsible for all that happened in the past. Originally, I wanted to marry Diyuan, to make your daughter the queen and a maternal model for the world. Of course, what I want to do the most is to make up for the loss. For the past 200 years, I have always known that you were there, though you have never really said a word to me. Therefore, I think that if one day I can prove the way, I will resurrect you and call you master. Ji Wudao spoke slowly. His voice was unbelievably gentle and full of reverence. This was the fearless and lawless Ji Wudao speaking. He devoured cultivators from all sides to strengthen himself. Even great emperors were no exception. He ignored everything and everyone, calling Dongwang the Great a coward. When the 6 emperors gathered, he had disguised himself to stir the pot among them. However, at this moment, he appeared so gentle. The people in Heavenly Palace had never seen this side of Ji Wudao, and everyone in the 99th heaven was stunned when they heard him. They had no idea what had just happened. Who was Ji Wudao talking to? Was it the heavenly path above the 99th heaven? Was this piece of the heavenly path the heavenly emperor? But is all of this just wishful thinking? Ji Wudao asked the firmament. I hope not. Having said that, he quietly looked at the sky without saying another word as he continued staring into the sky. He was waiting for an answer. The atmosphere in the 99th heaven was a little out of the ordinary. Many did not realize something was happening and continued cultivating in their own little world. Some had become aware of the changes and looked at Ji Wudao, who was above the heavenly palace. A breeze blew past him, causing ripples to spread across Ji Wudao's robe. Nowadays he possessed the noble temperament that was only possible to find on the heavenly emperor. He was one of the existences that stood at the peak of the world. In the future, he might even be the one and only. This was what the world thought, and Ji Wudao thought. He was from the main lineage of the heavenly realm, the heir of the heavenly emperor, and reigned as the current heavenly emperor. Once upon a time, he thought that after he married Dong Wangdian, who was a descendant of the heavenly emperor, everything would be perfect and complete. They would be the most enviable couple in the world, a destined pair. However, Dong Wangdian was not a descendant of the heavenly emperor. The real descendant of the heavenly emperor may already be on his way here. Below, clouds and mist tossed and turned as a figure passing through the 99th heaven and came above it. When the cultivators in the 99th heaven saw the appearance of this figure, they were stunned. They were a little surprised how this man could make it here. The man who arrived was clad in white, so meticulous that he appeared to be untouched by any trace of impurity. His long silvery hair moved with the wind as he stood quietly in the void. He raised his head and looked above the firmament, as if he had detected something there. Huh! Many people showed an expression of surprise. Futian's presence had alarmed the cultivators on the 99th heaven, and they were all looking at him. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. How come he's here? Everyone secretly marveled. They knew that Futian and Ji Wudao were two exceptional individuals in today's world. Ji Wudao kept a low profile, and he was slow to reveal his full prowess. Once unleashed, however, his ascension was all but unavoidable, and he became the reigning heavenly emperor. On the other hand, Futian rose to fame in the original realm, becoming the original realm's #1 genius talent, working hard every step of the way. The two men were considered two of the most dazzling young men in the world today. No one, not even Dong Wangdian, Di Hao, or any others, could compare to them. Now, why would Futian come here? However, what was even more uncanny was that Futian in the void and Ji Wudao standing above the heavenly palace had the same movements as both men looked up into the sky. This bizarre sight piqued everyone's curiosity. Could it have something to do with this piece of the heavenly path in the 99th heaven? The release of these two men's perceptions allowed them to connect with the heavenly path in the 99th heaven at the same time. Suddenly, a vision appeared above the firmament. The divine light of law fell from the heavenly path and descended on both of them. At this time, Futian couldn't care less about Ji Wudao. His entire consciousness was completely immersed in that piece of heavenly path as he opened up his heart and mind to resonate with it. Instantly, in that heavenly path, a virtual world seemed to have manifested. His own elusive shadow was there, floating above that slice of heavenly path. It seemed as if he was looking for something. At this time, above the heavenly path, a curious force was gathering, and a face appeared. Futian looked at the face that was slowly coming into view. He clenched his fists. It was a flawless face, gentle as water, tranquil and noble. Just a glance was enough to make him feel comforted. Looking at this perfect visage, Futian felt only a tinge of sadness. Was this his mother, the most excellent woman in the world, the daughter of the heavenly emperor, who wanted to remake the heavenly path? However, this was the first time he saw his mother. Surrounded by the divine power of this heavenly path, Futian felt a very comforting warmth. He understood that all of this was true, that he was indeed the son of the sovereign princess, and Dong Wang the Great. "Mother!" Futian called out in a low voice. He reached out with his hand as if to grab that vague shadow. However, even he was not a real figure in this world. He saw the shadow gradually dissipate, but he could still feel the warmth that flowed through his entire body. At this time, Futian's own body was bathed in divine glory, and infinite divine brilliance poured down from above that slice of heavenly path. It resonated with his body, and the glow of light was illuminated the distance visible to the human eye. What's going on? The cultivators on the 99th heaven were shocked when they beheld this wondrous sight. Why was Futian bathed in the divine glory of the heavenly path? They looked at Jiwudao above the heavenly palace and saw that Jiwudao was also bathed in the divine light of the law, but it was not nearly as brilliant as Futian. Jiwudao, whose attention was still focused upon the sky, had a look of sudden understanding in his eyes as he said, "So I'm just a vessel, is that it?" Gradually, his eyes were no longer as calm as before but with a bit of cold indifference. He interrogated, "Why choose me if there is him? Why am I here? If I am here, what was the purpose of having him?" Divine glory continued to pour down, surrounding all around Jiwudao. A terrifying aura suddenly erupted from Jiwudao. At this moment, his aura seemed to have changed. A wild divine power erupted fiercely from him as the devouring power pervaded, swallowing up the divine glory that was sprinkled upon him moments ago. "Even if you didn't appreciate me, I will still fulfill your will and replace this heaven," Jiwudao proclaimed as an even more frightening aura burst from him. In the next moment, he had disappeared directly from the heavenly palace. Bang! A loud noise was heard, and before the people in the 99th heaven had a chance to react, they saw the divine light surrounding Futian. The world particles circled him, turning into a light screen. Within this light curtain, there was a gigantic handprint. This gigantic handprint was from none other than Jiwudao. A terrifying aura emerged from Jiwudao as his hand seemed to have turned into a terrifying black hole. Suddenly, the light screen around Futian began to disintegrate and collapse. Those world particles were being swallowed up as they surged into the black hole of a vortex. This terrifying devouring power enveloped the boundless space, instantly burying where Futian was. It looked as if Jiwudao wanted to devour all of it. Chaotic heavenly swallowing method! The heart of every cultivator was beating wildly. They saw that the space Futian occupied was crumbling and shattering like mad. Everything was about to be engulfed. Even the defense gathered by the world divine power could not sustain that devouring power. This was a kind of terrifying divine technique from ancient times, the chaotic heavenly swallowing method. It was still a mystery where Jiwudao actually cultivated this unusual method. The heavenly emperor did not cultivate this ability, so he couldn't have inherited it from the heaven realm. This divine method had been taboo, and it was far too terrifying. It could devour the power of the others for his own use. Jiwudao's sudden attack towards Futian, and those words he had spoken before seemed to suggest that Futian may have something to do with this slice of heavenly path. They even heard Jiwudao call himself a disciple and that this slice of the heavenly path was not the remnant of the ancient heavenly path. This slice of the heavenly path seemed to have chosen Futian between the two, so Jiwudao went berserk in disappointment, intending to devour Futian directly. In the 99th heaven, all eyes were on the battlefield. Jiwudao, the reigning heavenly emperor, was known as the most enchanting existence in his generation of the seven realms. He was the one and only. His best record was made not too long ago. He had infiltrated the divine palace, slaughtered, and devoured several emperors. He managed to retreat successfully and returned to the 99th heaven safely. Even though he had leveraged the power of the heavenly path, it was still a shocking feat. Futian was the former king of the original realm. However, after the great changes in the world, the original realm was no longer what it was before. Even though cultivators from the seven realms have all arrived, Futian was still the number one genius talent in the original realm, the founder of Imperial Palace. His best war record was the obliteration of 7 great emperors in one strike. The two were said to be the 2 most powerful genius talents in the world, and at this moment, they were both here for war. Was this battle a duel between the 7 realms' 2 most powerful genius talents? Whoever won would be the number 1 genius talent in all of the world. Everyone understood that although they had not yet proved their way as the great emperor, they were enough to be considered emperors. Ordinary great emperors were not enough to contend with the likes of them at all. Above them, there were only the 6 emperors who reigned higher than they did. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. On the battlefield, the terrifying power of the chaotic heavenly swallowing method erupted, and Yi Futian's divine prefecture defense kept collapsing and shattering. He was about to be swallowed up by Ji Wudao, whose handprint was like a bottomless black hole. Boom! The horrific divine power rushed towards the black hole frantically. Yi Futian's divine power exploded as his body tossed and roared. The divine power teared out from his body fiercely, dived into that engulfing black hole. That divine power contained the heaven-slaying divine power within, and its power of attack was unparalleled. It turned into a storm of destruction and pierced into the black hole, but he only heard the sounds of thunder coming from the black hole. It was a ponderous thud that rendered Yi Futian's heaven-slaying divine power like a rock that sank into the ocean, falling without a trace. The terrifying black hole storm of vortex kept rolling towards Yi Futian, trying to engulf him. Accompanied by the eruption of this terrifying force, the vast and boundless space gathered into currents, which were then swept into the black hole. Even this corner of the sky seemed to be on the verge of being swallowed up. Further away, some cultivators who were watching the battle on the 99th heaven were unexpectedly swept by the current of the vortex and were instantly drawn into it, heading deeper inside. What kind of terrifying power is this? The cultivator in another direction looked at the imagery in front of him in total shock. Even the sky above them was about to be swallowed up. When the chaotic heavenly swallowing method was at full power, a handprint turned into a black hole, and that terrifying dark vortex was capable of swallowing up the heavens. Heavenly Emperor, have mercy on us! Some cultivators caught up in the storm roared, but it was of no use. At this moment, Ji Wudao's heart was cold as ice, and there was only murderous intent. He only wanted to devour Yi Futian, swallowing his existence. Some cultivators were directly sucked inside the storm before they could even let out a scream. It was a terribly scary sight. Boom! Yi Futian made those particles suddenly grow, each turning into a starry world of its own, letting out violent roars. They smashed directly at Ji Wudao. This starry world was boundless and massive, and all the cultivators had made themselves scarce. There was no expression on Ji Wudao's face, and his palm seemed to have turned into an infinite black hole. It was as if there was another world inside of it. It was like the great path divine realm, which instantly sucked the massive starry world into it. The starry world collapsed and pulverized at an unimaginable speed and was swallowed up. The outcome still had not changed. A terrifying devouring power swallowed Yi Futian into the black hole, causing Yi Futian's long hair to fly wildly in the wind. His clothes fluttered as they were making a whistling sound. Buzz! A boundless and gigantic long spear condensed into being. This long spear was conceived by the terrifying divine power. With a thought, his body was sucked inside the storm along with the long spear in his hand. Together, they slammed into the storm. But the spear was rapidly expanding, slamming directly into the storm, and pierced into it. In an instant, a terrifying explosion was heard as the storm was collapsing and shattering. And the black hole formed by the handprint was destroyed. But even so, it made everyone tremble with fear. They couldn't believe just a handprint could contain such terrifying power. Ji Wudao was just getting started, and his strength had not fully exploded. Divine power derived from the chaotic heavenly swallowing method? Yi Futian looked at Ji Wudao and asked, "What kind of divine power is this?" "Black hole." Ji Wudao stared at Yi Futian and replied, "You are her descendant. If you are willing to surrender to me, I don't have to kill you. I will finish her work, and you will assist me." "You have gone on a crooked path," Yi Futian responded. Come out and fight. As soon as Futian's voice faded, he stepped out and left here directly. Fighting here would be disastrous for those who cultivated in the 99th heaven. Ji Wudao was in possession of the chaotic heavenly swallowing method, which helped him advance rapidly. He was one of the most powerful beings in the world, and his potential was terrifying. However, it was also because of this chaotic heavenly swallowing method that Ji Wudao's path was destined to go astray. He could devour the others for his own cultivation. When they were on the God's Ruins continent, Ji Wudao had a lot of blood on his hands. He killed many cultivators who had plundered and taken the lives of the others, swallowing the inheritances these cultivators had acquired inside the relics. More importantly, Yi Futian could feel that Ji Wudao had a stubborn personality, and had an unusually high opinion of himself. To achieve his goals, he would do anything. In addition to the chaotic heavenly swallowing method that he cultivated, he might be a disaster waiting to happen in the cultivation world. The two of them were destined not able to coexist. When Ji Wudao saw that Yi Futian left voluntarily and gave up his advantage here, he looked up at the sky and said, "Since he wants a fair fight, I will allow it and spare his life." When he finished, his figure also disappeared, as he was chasing after Yi Futian. After Yi Futian left the 99th heaven in the heavenly realm, he went through the passageway in the heaven realm to get to the original realm, and then came to the space of the void amid the boundless starry sky. The infinite space of the void was silent. There were no traces of any cultivators here. Some starry continents could be seen in the distance, but they were continents where no one was cultivating. Yi Futian then turned around, facing the area below, waiting for Ji Wudao to get there. Soon, a figure appeared below, turning into a flash of lightning as it climbed upward. It was Ji Wudao. Buzz! The moment Yi Futian's mind moved, an extremely bright golden light screen appeared above the sky. It covered the sky and the sun, as well as the boundless space. It was as if it had transformed into a terrifying divine matrix of swordsmanship. An extremely frightening sharp aura descended from above, and countless rays of light were falling. Every ray of light contained the power to slay heaven, directly attacking Ji Wudao, who was coming in for the kill. Divine light circulated around Ji Wudao, and the 9 dragons' true chi was released. He was bathing in the divine power of destruction, yet he was unmoved. "A lot of these abilities were given to you by your mother. Today, I will use these abilities to defeat you." Ji Wudao looked up at Yi Futian and roared, unparalleled confidence within himself. Yi Futian didn't respond. A boundless and massive divine matrix above him sheltered an infinite area, and countless divine swords fell from the divine matrix. This was the heaven-slaying matrix, and every divine sword contained the heaven-slaying divine power. The divine swords sailed across the void, slaying down with domineering aggression. It annihilated the infinite space and zoomed in on Ji Wudao for the kill. With 9 dragons' true chi protecting his body, an imperial shadow 10,000 feet high appeared, surrounded by the divine light of the law. Terrifying heaven-slaying sword blasted down, all of which were blocked by the protective divine light that surrounded him. Even though it had stabbed into the target, it could not penetrate the defense to get a hit on Ji Wudao. Yi Futian raised his hand and stretched it towards the void. Suddenly gigantic divine swords appeared in the heaven-slaying divine matrix in the firmament. The divine light came straight down, turning into a light beam. It penetrated the boundless heaven and earth. "Heaven-slaying!" Yi Futian spat. As soon as his voice faded, heaven and earth were torn apart, and a terrifying spatial crack appeared. The light beam from the divine sword shuttled down in the horrific dark crack. A deafening booming sound was heard between heaven and earth. The divine swords came down in an instant, tearing apart the terrifying crack. With a loud bang, the protective light screen formed by the 9 dragons' true chi was shattered. However, that terrifying divine swords continued to move downward, slashing at that gigantic imperial shadow. Ji Wudao raised his hand and unleashed a blast that turned into the seal of the Heavenly Emperor, colliding with the divine swords. The storm of destruction swept across this corner of the sky. Even Ji Wudao was slammed down, while that towering imperial shadow was also repelled. He glanced at Yi Futian and thought that for him to be able to rock him with the divine power of the micro-heavenly path, it seemed that the level of divine power created by Yi Futian was extremely advanced. He stretched out his hands, and suddenly, infinite divine swords appeared from all around him. They were the Tianqing divine swords. His majestic body turned into heaven-punishing god of war. When he saw the divine swords raining down from the firmament, Tianqing divine swords also exploded simultaneously, going upward against the momentum. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. At this moment, an extremely splendid sight appeared in the void. Divine swords and divine swords clashed and collided as the sword light illuminated the boundless void. The storm of destruction raged in this space, and even some continents in the distance were penetrated and shattered by the sword will. One could imagine just how horrific this sword she had been. But at this moment, the sound of Buddha was heard lingering, as the light of Buddha dazzled, shrouding this space. The brilliant and sacred light of Buddha appeared in the firmament, illuminating endlessly. Boundless and massive ancient Buddhas appeared between heaven and earth, and each one seemed to be a Buddha that had achieved enlightenment. They each occupied a place, like all the Buddhas in the heavens had appeared together. Yi Futian stood in the center, raising his hand and slamming it down hard, turning it into a gigantic symbol of Wan. This symbol of Wan continued to expand, covering the entire sky and even the sun. An incomparably golden light of Buddha dazzled above the Buddha's Madra, and it was formed from countless symbols of Wan, flowing endlessly within the lines of the symbols. Those symbols of Wan seemed to be alive and moving. This handprint was hard and unyielding, invincible and indestructible. It suppressed the world and shattered the ages. Wherever it passed, everything was wiped out. This was no longer the Buddhist offense that Yi Futian comprehended while he cultivated in the world of Buddhism, but something else that he had transformed while he cultivated in his micro-heavenly path. Each rune contained the power of the world of Buddhism. When this handprint came down, it was like the world of infinity slamming down. Even all the symbols of Wan were spinning. But none of this could be seen from below because everything was shrouded. Ji Wudao looked at that incredibly horrific Buddhist handprint, which covered the sky and the sun. No matter where he went, he was under the coverage of this handprint, which had submerged even the heavens. No wonder Yi Futian came here to fight. Only in the endless void could they fight so recklessly and at will. If they were in the 99th heaven, this Buddhist handprint would shroud all of the 99 heavens. The blast of one handprint would be enough to shatter all 99 heavens. Indeed, he deserves to be the true descendant of the Master, Ji Wudao secretly marveled in his heart as he beheld the sight. This kind of attack was indeed an attack worth responding to. Most of the great emperors he met before this could not be acknowledged as great emperors in his mind. They were far too weak and could easily be obliterated, especially some of those returning ancient emperors. They could hardly be taken seriously by the likes of him. He didn't expect that the person who could fight him would be the descendant of the only master he ever revered in his life. Perhaps this was what they called fate. The gigantic figure of the heavenly emperor raised his hand, and immediately the 9 dragons' true chi circulated in the palm of his hand. The surrounding world changed drastically. The space seemed to be twisted into forming a great storm. He raised his arm, and his hand blasted towards the Wan Buddha's Madra above the firmament. It was also a boundless and massive divine seal. It was the seal of the universe. Bang! A dull thud came out, and the seal of the universe was meant to overturn the universe. When the attack landed, the light of Buddha above the symbol of Wan seemed to stop moving. However, along with the violent roaring that came out, the terrifying divine seal continued to descend until it crushed the seal of the universe and slammed into Ji Wudao below. Ji Wudao's mind moved, and countless divine swords shot upward against the momentum, slamming into different parts on the Wan Buddha's Madra. These countless huge holy swords held up the giant Buddha's Madra of the heavens. Then Ji Wudao, with hands forward, unleashed Futian pagodas to smash down, blasting on the Wan Buddha's Madra. Finally, cracks appeared on the Wan Buddha's Madra, which continued to expand. Ji Wudao, as the incarnation of the Heavenly Emperor, stepped into the void, with the sword of the Heavenly Emperor in hand, slashing at the Wan Buddha's Madra, giving it the final blow. Boom! A shockingly loud sound was heard as if the sky and earth were falling apart. That boundless and massive one Buddha's Madra finally disintegrated and shattered, turning into countless golden lights of Buddha that illuminated heaven and earth. But at this moment, a divine light came from outside the sky, and the symbol of one shattered. Futian held the long spear as a light sailed across, piercing through heaven and earth. One strike had broken through the heavens. It was unimaginably fast. Wudao let out a great shout as the 9 dragons' true chi protected his person, but the spear penetrated it. He raised his hands and blasted out a terrifying vortex of engulfing storm, which appeared in the handprint. He wanted to take that slaughtering spear and Futian both into the storm. Buzz! The long spear flew out of Futian's hand, slamming down with fatal force. With a loud bang, Wudao's body was blasted back. He took a look at his hand and saw that a bloody mark had appeared. Nonetheless, it was healing rapidly, and the bloody mark disappeared in a blink of an eye. Wudao raised his head to glance at Futian. There was a bit of seriousness now in those eyes. It seemed that he had underestimated Futian. His body floated in one direction and came not too far away to a starry continent. His palms stretched out towards the other side, and suddenly a terrifying vortex storm appeared in his palm, like a black hole. Terrifying sounds of rumbling came out, and that starry continent pulverized directly, its remnant rushed into his palm. Then, in the vortex in front of his palm, a massive spear came into being. He had directly devoured a continent to gather it into a spear, which seemed to compete toe-to-toe with Futian's spear. It was a massive black long spear, pitch black and profound, filled with a highly frightening aura. A black hole loomed at the tip of the spear, converging into a vortex, madly devouring everything around it. The long spear in Wudao's hand was unleashed towards Futian, and his eyes turned demonic. Those pitch-black pupils seemed to have turned into dark vortices, terrifying to the extreme. "Chaotic heavenly swallowing!" spat Wudao. In an instant, the surrounding space seemed to collapse. It was completely destroyed in the madness. The space in the original realm was inherently unstable, and could not withstand the attack of cultivators in the Imperial realm. At this moment, Wudao's burst of divine power was the most terrifying out of all the opponents Futian had ever faced. The space collapsed and shattered with insanity and was swallowed up by Wudao. A terrifying black hole of vortex appeared in front of the spear, and it wanted to engulf the entire world into the spear. The boundless world turned into a divine realm. Within the great path divine realm, all material matter ceased to exist. Futian stood there and came under a tremendously terrifying oppression. However, the divine power circled him. His body was like a world of his own as he stood there, firm and unshaken. But behind him, somewhere in the infinite distant place, the starry continents were collapsing and shattering. Debris rolled over in Wudao's direction. In the place where Wudao was, the terrifying black hole formed by the giant long spear was getting more and more horrific. The dark and profound spear of the black hole contained a power that was truly terrifying. In the area below, somewhere very far away, people rushed over to witness the battle in the void, and the people who came had extremely strong cultivation levels. All of them were at least at the level of emperors to be, otherwise, they would not be able to reach this area. But even the emperors to be were just at the level of the imperial realm. When they saw what was happening above the firmament, and felt heaven's swallowing power, they quickly retreated. They did not have to get any closer before they knew that even from a great distance away, they would not be safe from the ripples of the battle. They retreated somewhere very far away, their eyes fixed on the firmament above. They saw the collapse and destruction of those stars. It was as if they were being swallowed up one by one. The dark black hole formed there. Even if they were separated by infinite space, their hearts still trembled. It was simply too terrifying. Was this Wudao's most powerful state? Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. Could Futian withstand Wudao's attack in this form? If Wudao continues like this, he may surpass the 6 emperors and become the strongest existence in the world, some people thought. The chaotic heavenly swallowing method was a monstrous technique that could defy any and all type of resistance. It could engulf the heavens. Moreover, whatever he swallowed could be used for whatever he wanted. Conceivably, Ji Wudao could only become stronger. He would continue to devour others to strengthen himself, eventually devouring the world as a whole. As long as he wanted, he would be a disaster for the rest of the world. But it was impossible to know how much Ji Wudao himself would grow. There was simply no way to tell. More importantly, this state was when this technique had not yet reached its peak. What would happen when it was perfected? It was something unimaginable. Nothing can escape that devouring power. In the divine realm, everything can be used for its nourishment. All the cultivators were shocked. Would Yi Futian be engulfed? If Yi Futian were to die here today, he would be swallowed up. If so, Ji Wudao would become truly invincible. Ji Wudao was already a monstrous genius talent. If he devoured another similar being, how horrific would he be? Inconceivable. But even at this moment, Yi Futian did not move. To remain unmovable even under such terrifying devouring power, Yi Futian's divine power could only be imagined. They were thinking, just how heavy was Yi Futian in order for him to withstand such terrifying devouring power? At this time, Yi Futian stood there. The divine power surged wildly inside his body, erupting violently. At this moment Yi Futian, who was standing in the void, was not occupying just one corner of a world but was in thousands of worlds at once. A micro-heavenly path was inside of him, and every single particle from it could be transformed into a world. At this time, the divine power burst out fiercely, spreading towards the surrounding space. How heavy was Yi Futian? His attention was fixed on Ji Wudao. The black hole divine power and the ultimate derivation of the chaotic heavenly swallowing method created a peak-level divine power, which could devour all material matter in the space. In reality, he sensed that this ability was somewhat similar to the ultimate spear strike that he had created. The spear technique that was unleashed, the entombed, used the way of time and space as its foundation and was capable of distorting time and space. The space collapsed, and everything else was about to be swallowed up and buried. However, this was not a derivation of the devouring divine power, but a divine method evolved from the time and space divine power. Therefore, Yi Futian was curious to see which one of their spear techniques was the most superior. Boom! Yi Futian's body was growing. Like Ji Wudao, his body was being transformed into its imperial form. He stood tall between heaven and earth. The ferocious explosion of divine power gathered into a long spear. The aura that came from the tip of the spear was frightening. Time and space seemed to be significantly distorted by it. Since Ji Wudao wanted to determine who the winner was by a duel of spears, then Yi Futian would oblige Ji Wudao's wish. Ji Wudao felt that power, and his expression was grave as well. He reincarnated into the real heavenly emperor, holding a giant pitch-black spear. He pointed it in Yi Futian's direction. The terrifying devouring storm was still wrapped around Yi Futian. He knew that even though Yi Futian had stabilized himself, he must be under tremendous pressure. The two men looked at each other across the space, each holding a long spear in his hand. One was a white-haired man with a silver spear, and the other was a black-haired man with a pitch-black spear. Two incomparably terrifying forces erupted from them. As if they had achieved some tacit understanding, both men moved at the same time. At this moment, above the firmament, the two deities moved towards each other as they unleashed the spears in their hands. Many people looked up at the two giant deities in the firmament in the distant area below them, and their hearts were beating wildly. When the two long spears collided, they saw that the space above the firmament was crumbling and collapsing like mad. It seemed as if the apocalypse was upon them. The infinite space was shattered and destroyed. The two had entered the space of the void, but their attacks continued. As for those below, even the cultivators who were great emperors could not describe the shock they felt at this moment. The two men who were clashing were in a terrifying situation themselves. When the spears collided, Yi Futian saw a massive black hole engulfing everything, devouring his spear and his deity-like body. His godlike body was shaking. However, his spear will erupted as well, distorting time and space. Everything was on the verge of destruction. Everything sunk under the collapse, including that giant black hole. This brief moment seemed like a long time. It was accompanied by the roaring, booming sounds of destruction, which resounded through the boundless world. Finally, the two men separated. The divine power upon Futian's body seemed to have been weakened considerably. His body shook as his gigantic eyes stared at the figure standing opposite him. The pitch-black spear in Wudao's hand disappeared, and his eyes were also fixed on Futian. He remained motionless. "Power of time and space," Wudao commented. "It must have been a kind of ultimate divine power. Even the black hole divine power was suppressed." Futian stared at Wudao. Without this powerful strike, he would not have been able to suppress Wudao's black hole divine power. "We will meet again." Wudao's voice faded. His body seemed to melt into the space of the void, then he disappeared without a trace. In the sky high above, everything returned to its previous state of tranquility. Wudao disappeared. It seemed he had been defeated. Futian won. Everyone below looked up at that white-haired figure. In this duel between the two strongest men of the current generation, Futian had actually suppressed Wudao. The number one enchanting genius in the original realm had defeated the most powerful proud son in the Seven Realm, the reigning heavenly emperor, Wudao. No wonder he's the existence who defeated 7 emperors with one strike, many people marveled secretly in their hearts. After this battle, Futian was not just the number one genius talent in the original realm, he was the most powerful genius talent in the world today. There was no one who could even come close to him. The spear disappeared. Futian turned into a phantom and vanished as well. Although Wudao was defeated, he remained a major threat. His potential was incredibly frightening. Wudao, who had cultivated the chaotic heavenly swallowing method, would inevitably grow without limits or boundaries. There would surely be yet another fierce battle in the future. Coupled with the current turmoil in the 7 realms, he needed to elevate his strength as soon as possible to reach the level of the 6 emperors. The news of this battle quickly swept across the 7 realms and the God's Ruins continent in the original realm, rocking the world. At the same time, another piece of news was making the rounds. Not long ago, Donghuang the Great had wanted to pass the throne on to Futian, naming him Futian the Great. However, Futian rejected his offer, who did not take over the throne in the Divine Prefecture. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. This news instantly caused a shocking storm. Countless voices said that Donghuang the Great wanted to make amends towards Emperor Yi Qing out of guilt, thus returning the throne to Emperor Yi Qing's descendant. However, gradually, many began to learn that Futian was the master of the Divine Prefecture and the son of Donghuang the Great. At the same time, Futian was also the descendant of the Heavenly Emperor, which was why he went to the Heaven Realm to fight Wudao. He was the true heir of the Heaven Realm. The heavenly path in the 99th heaven was not the residual consciousness left over from the ancient heavenly path, nor was it the Heavenly Emperor. Instead, it was an alternative form of the Sovereign Princess. Most people were unfamiliar with the daughter of the former Heavenly Emperor, especially among the cultivators in the lower worlds. Very few people even knew of her existence. Only people in the upper level knew something of him, and the kind of shocking existence she was, or that she wanted to remake the existence of the heavenly path. Because of this reason, the battle in which she fell seemed non-existent to the world, and little was known about it. Only now, with so much information coming to light that some secrets had begun to emerge in all of the realms, made known to more and more people. When Futian returned to the 99th heaven in the Heaven Realm, most of the cultivators were still there. The cultivators from Heavenly Imperial Palace were in attendance as well. When they saw Futian return, they knew the outcome of the battle. For the people of the Heavenly Imperial Palace, it was a complicated emotion, especially those from the older generation. They thought that Wudao was the successor chosen by the Sovereign Princess, but that turned out not to be the truth. It was Futian who had been hiding behind the scenes all along. He was the true successor of the lineage of the Heaven Realm. It was in his veins that the blood of the Heavenly Emperor flowed. Great Skylords Black and White Almighty, the 4 heavenly kings, the 9 star lords, and all the other cultivators in the heavenly imperial palace were there. In front of them were 2 more figures. They were the 2 great empresses that Yi Futian had seen in the Dongwang imperial palace before, and they were here now. At this moment, Yi Futian understood that they used to belong to the heavenly imperial palace and must be followers of his mother. Therefore, they came here in person to take back the heaven realm. Ji Wudao betrayed the heaven realm, and from this day forward, he will be expelled from the heavenly imperial palace. He is no longer a part of the heavenly imperial palace. Still, a traitor of the heavenly imperial palace, announced a great empress to the cultivators of the heavenly imperial palace. Although this was the conclusion that everyone had already known, their feelings were inevitable and expected. They had watched Ji Wudao grow up until this day and had always regarded Ji Wudao as the future heavenly emperor, waiting for him to come into his own. But just when Ji Wudao embarked on the path of the emperors, and just as he was about to be named the heavenly emperor, the true heir apparent appeared. And this meant that Ji Wudao was to assist him instead. How many people could bear such a reversal of fortune and accept it willingly? Furthermore, he was Ji Wudao, who was incredibly arrogant and conceited. Ji Wudao, who thought so highly of himself, had dedicated himself to reviving the heaven realm and to avenging the master. He had even taken the unification of the 7 realms and took charge of the universe. How could someone with such wild ambition be willing to serve under another? With everything taken into consideration, Ji Wudao's betrayal was inevitable. His only sin was that he was too excellent. If he had not been so excellent, and without such lofty ambitions, he might not have committed treason and would have served Yi Futian willingly. What had Ji Wudao done wrong? He had devoured many cultivators. And because chaotic heavenly swallowing method was deemed an evil method, he was also viewed as an evil character by the outsiders. But for the heaven realm, Ji Wudao had indeed done something wrong. He had always taken the revival of the heaven realm as his mission and fought for its cause. He suffered in silence for years, developing himself quietly. The problem was that he thought too highly of himself and had too much ambition. He thought of himself as the one chosen by fate and ought to be the one shouldering entirety of this mission. In actuality, this was not what the sovereign princess wanted him to do. His existence was just that of a trusted disciple. When the truth was revealed, it turned out that he was here to assist Yi Futian. I have a question. At this moment, the Pagoda King, one of the 4 heavenly kings, came forward. He looked at Yi Futian and asked, Dongwang separated himself from the heaven realm once. Why should his descendant now be in charge of it again? What is the will of the princess? In addition, if the princess doesn't want Ji Wudao to inherit the throne of the heavenly emperor, why did she teach him the 9 dragons' true qi? Ji Wudao has dedicated himself to reviving the heavenly imperial palace all these years, and now he has been labeled a traitor. This is a bit too much. The Pagoda King had fought against Yi Futian before, but this had been in the land of the original realm many years ago before discovering the God's Ruins continent. Who else thinks that? Or is there anybody else with another opinion? The great empress looked around at the crowd. I too was wondering about the same thing. The Melody King responded. No one else came forward or said anything. The great empress nodded slightly before she spoke. The will of the princess need not be explained to the likes of you. As for the 9 dragons' true qi, the princess did not mind that Ji Wudao would inherit the throne of the heavenly emperor. The throne of the heavenly emperor does not need to be in conflict with assisting the young master. But Ji Wudao made his own choice after knowing the truth, disrespecting the young master, equivalent to betrayal. How could there be any questions about this? As for Ji Wudao's way of doing things, it has always run counter to the beliefs held by the princess. All of you are guilty of letting him do whatever he wished before. But for our sake, I will not look into it. However, if anyone is willing to follow Ji Wudao, then go. Leave now, the great empress said while surveying everyone. Everyone was speechless when they heard the words of the great empress. Ji Wudao did nothing wrong. But then again, who else had done something wrong? Everything that Ji Wudao had was also bestowed upon him by the grace of the heavenly imperial palace. The only thing was that he couldn't bear the truth of him not being the chosen one. Yi Futian looked at everyone, and he felt a complicated emotion inside. The divine prefecture was now left for Dongwang Diyuan to inherit. Then what of the heaven realm? Who would inherit that? He had no use for power or authority, but fate had placed all of this on his shoulders, pushing him forward. In some matters, when did he ever have a say in any of this? Greetings to the young master! At this moment, a voice was heard, and it was the great Skylords Black and White Almighty bowing and saluting Yi Futian. When the other cultivators saw this, they knew that it was a foregone conclusion. So they, too, bowed and acknowledged Yi Futian. Young master! They cheered. In the heavenly imperial palace, the salutations came one after one another. As far the older generation of the heavenly imperial palace was concerned, all of them were actually quite willing to obey the princess. However, things were happening too fast for them to react this time. Yi Futian, who was considered an enemy once, was now revealed to be the young master they should serve. Naturally, this was a little uncomfortable for many of them. But considering the matter more and more, some realized that Yi Futian was, in fact, the most outstanding person in the world. He was the progeny of Dongwang the Great, and the daughter of the Heavenly Emperor. This was the most prestigious lineage in the world. He was not only the descendant of the Heavenly Emperor but also the son of Dongwang the Great. Who else could compare with this combination? Moreover, Yi Futian did not take advantage of this slice of the heavenly path but had chosen to go outside to fight with Ji Wudao instead. Additionally, he had defeated him. He no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. In the 99th heaven, countless cultivators felt that what was happening above them in the heavenly palace was a little too surreal. Yi Futian became the master of the heavenly imperial palace and the master of the heaven realm. When they saw this, the two great empresses walked towards Yi Futian and bowed slightly. If the young master chooses not to inherit the divine prefecture, there will be no other successor to take charge of the heavenly imperial palace. It is our wish that the young master will ascend to the throne as the heavenly emperor and rebuild the heavenly palace, eventually ruling over the entire heaven realm. Everyone in the heavenly imperial palace had their eyes on Yi Futian. In today's world, apart from the 6 emperors, Yi Futian almost had no other opponents who were his equals. Additionally, he was still growing. Indeed, he was the ideal candidate to become the heavenly emperor. More importantly, it was his birthright because he was the true heir of the heaven realm. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. Young master, please step onto the throne of the heavenly emperor and rebuild the heavenly palace. The great Skylords Black and White Almighty also implored. Young master, please step onto the throne of the heavenly emperor and rebuild the heavenly palace. Other cultivators responded kindly and implored him to take on his role. For a moment, the sounds of their pleading resounded throughout the 99th heaven. They had asked Yi Futian to ascend to the throne of the heavenly emperor. Yi Futian looked at everyone, then glanced at the sky above him. Rays of divine light fell on him, and he seemed to feel some warmth from them. Do you also wish for me to inherit the throne of the emperor? Yi Futian conveyed without using his voice. After the fall of the heavenly emperor, the sovereign princess, his mother, did not take over the throne as the heavenly emperor. Even though her strength was already incredible, she did not claim the throne of the emperor herself. This was also why the cultivators today still referred to her as princess. Now, they hoped that he would inherit the throne of the heavenly emperor even though it had skipped a generation. The decaying heavenly imperial palace and the broken heaven realm might need the leadership of a new heavenly emperor. Yi Futian seemed to sense the answer. A smile appeared on his face. He looked in the direction of the heavenly palace and nodded. Dongwang the Great of the Divine Prefecture was still around. He was one of the reigning 6 emperors in the world. He was extremely powerful and was one of the most powerful beings in the world. In the future, Dongwang Diyuan would be able to inherit the throne of Dongwang the Great. Once upon a time, Emperor Yiqing had sacrificed himself for this plan. Therefore, it was not so unreasonable to return the divine prefecture to Dongwang Diyuan. But the heaven realm was different. The heaven realm had been in decline for many years, and it wasn't until today that there was a glimmer of hope in reviving it. Previously, Ji Wudao was deemed the reigning heavenly emperor who would lead the heaven realm to reclaim its glory, but now this mission landed on Yi Futian. Now then, he was the only candidate to shoulder this heavy burden. "Young master, please." The two great empresses, one on each side of him, seemed to be guarding him, guiding Yi Futian to the very top of the heavenly imperial palace. Yi Futian looked over there before walking towards the heavenly palace, passing by many celestial temples. He came to the temple at the very top. There were pillars that reached beyond the sky, holding up a towering palace. There was a divine throne at the very top. At this time, Yi Futian walked to the ancient divine throne. He turned around and sat in it. The two great empresses knelt on one knee and proclaimed loudly, "Long live the heavenly emperor!" Following their example, the cultivators in the heavenly imperial palace also got down on one knee and saluted. They also proclaimed loudly, "Long live the heavenly emperor!" Although the heavenly imperial palace was defeated, there were many cultivators inside it. At this moment, they all got down on their knees and worshipped the new emperor. The heavenly emperor, many years ago, was the most revered great emperor in the world. In the era after the collapse of the heavenly path, the heavenly emperor possessed a status that was almost supreme. However, after the fall of the heavenly emperor, the heaven realm went into rapid decline. After many years, the new emperor was finally on the throne. Above the 99th heaven, many stood and watched. They were those who entered the heavenly imperial palace implicitly for the sake of this slice of the heavenly path. They had no sense of loyalty to the heavenly imperial palace, and they had already been told by Ji Wudao previously that those who dared to go back on their promises would be killed without a second thought. However, now that Ji Wudao was out of the picture, some found it difficult to kneel and worship Yi Futian as the heavenly emperor, even when he had already ascended the throne. After all, many of them were existences of ancient emperors, and some were emperors to be with very elevated realms. "Get up," Yi Futian said as he looked at the cultivators above the heavenly palace. The two great empresses got up, then turned to look at the rest of the cultivators in the 9 heavens and accused loudly, "All of you have agreed to join heavenly imperial palace. Now that the heavenly emperor is on the throne, why do you not salute him?" Everyone looked up at the heavenly palace above, but at this very moment, Yi Futian spoke and said, "It's quite all right. The revival of the heaven realm would require superior cultivators, which he would need to train himself. Everyone has been cultivating for many years. If you have no intention to become part of the heavenly imperial palace, you may leave now," Yi Futian declared loudly. His mother was generous and open-minded. She had gifted divine items to the dark world and the human realm to help them comprehend and cultivate. Yi Futian didn't think himself to be as generous. After he took over the heavenly imperial palace, only cultivators of heavenly imperial palace would be allowed to stay under this heavenly path. In the future, when he reached the very top, he would share that benefit with the rest of the world. After all, the situation in the world was uncertain, and it was not clear who was a friend and who was a foe. There may even be other imperial-level forces working undercover, and Yi Futian did not think it wise to aid the enemies. Many people looked at Yi Futian before they turned to walk away. They thought that it was enough. They had returned to the path of the emperors, and some had even entered the imperial realm, so there was no need to stay any longer. There were also those who were hesitating and struggling. Subsequently, many cultivators left, but there were also many who stayed. Yi Futian looked at the area below and continued, "Now that I have ascended the throne of the heavenly emperor, I will restructure the heavenly imperial palace. If you are staying just for self-cultivation and self-improvement, but have not made any preparations mentally, then I advise you to leave. If you choose to stay and become part of the heavenly imperial palace, know that we may be facing a great war in the future. At that time, there will be no time for hesitation, so you should consider the matter carefully." Sure enough, after Yi Futian finished speaking, more cultivators left. There were less and less people who chose to stay. This was a huge gamble, betting on the future of the heavenly imperial palace. Now that the world was in chaos, war might erupt at any given moment, and the heavenly imperial palace may perish, or it might rise. But even if it rose from the ashes, it would be after a tragic battle. When they thought of that, it was difficult for anyone to decide to stay because the odds of winning were just too low. With the departure of these cultivators, fewer and fewer people were left in the 99 heavens. Most of those who remained were top-level cultivators who wanted to make an attempt at the path to the emperors. On the outside world, there was absolutely no way to get to the path of the emperors. Here, there was at least a micro-heavenly path that could help them realize the way and break through to the ultimate realm. Therefore, they made a decision to stay even if the risk was great. However, the path of the emperor was a difficult and dangerous one. In order to achieve the imperial realm, these cultivators did not have any hesitation to pay the price, no matter how high. Futian sat on the divine throne as he surveyed the cultivators who remained in the 99 heavens. He said, "Finally, I wish to remind you, now that I have inherited the throne of the heavenly emperor, it is my wish to restructure the heavenly imperial palace. You can still choose your own path by leaving. However, once you decide to stay, you will have agreed to be under the command of the heavenly imperial palace from now on." No one was leaving. Those who stayed had made a decision, one that they could not change. After he waited for a while, seeing that no one was stirred, Futian continued, "Since you have made your decision, from this moment forward, you are cultivators of the heavenly imperial palace. You will share its losses as well as its glory." He stood up and looked at the two great empresses below and said to them, "Next, I have to trouble you two elders to help me clean up the heavenly imperial palace. We are delighted to serve your majesty, the heavenly emperor." The two great empresses bowed and saluted him. There were once 4 of them, all sisters, chosen by the heavenly emperor himself as companions to the princess. The 4 sisters grew up with the princess, and were like the princess' own sisters. The princess never treated them as servants. She freely shared cultivation methods with them and helped them in their cultivation. They knew very well that despite how she treated them, they were to guard the princess with their lives. However, Her Royal Highness never treated them with the slightest bit of arrogance. In fact, she had shared the treasures bestowed upon her by the heavenly emperor. In their eyes, the princess was perfection itself. She had no flaws. Moreover, the princess had a great love for the masses and was a total idealist. Perhaps it was precisely because of Her Royal Highness's noble background that she was able to hold on to her romantic ideals. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. The 4 of them may not have fully agreed with the ideals of the princess, but for someone like Her Royal Highness, they were willing to sacrifice everything for her. Back then, after their plan was formulated, everyone made sacrifices. The other 2 sisters completed an important part of it, and sacrificed themselves in the process. In the end, only the 2 of them were left to wait for the return of the young master. Since then, their mission had been to protect the new emperor and help him continue the unfinished businesses. Young master ought to continue the comprehension and cultivation of the heavenly path. The princess had been waiting for the young master for too long, and many things should be inherited by the young master now, one of the great empresses said. As for the restructuring of the heavenly imperial palace, leave it to us. You 2 elders cultivated with my mother? Futian asked. The 2 nodded and replied, "We were summoned by the heavenly emperor into the heavenly palace to cultivate with the princess. Additionally, we were her companions when she was growing up." Futian immediately understood that the relationship between these 2 women and his mother was somewhat similar to that between him and Yu Sheng, except that he and Yu Xing were brothers. In comparison, these 2 women were servants by name. "How should I address you 2 elders?" Futian asked. "The names that we received back then were given by the heavenly emperor. Young master may call me Qin, and she is Shu," Qin said while pointing to the other great empress. "Lady Qin, Lady Shu," Futian acknowledged, sighing in his heart. He continued, "There were 2 others, weren't there? With names like Qin and Shu, naturally, there would be Qi and Hua, one. The other 2 followed the princess back then." The two of them had waited for hundreds of years, and their hearts and minds were already hard as steel. However, when they heard Yi Futian's words, they still felt an unexpected sense of sadness. The young master's talent was unparalleled, yet he was so gentle and humble. He was a true gentleman, which reminded them of the princess. Out of the 5 of them, only 2 of them were left now. "Young master, you should cultivate while we go ahead with the arrangements," Lady Qin said. Yi Futian nodded. The 2 of them turned around and left while Yi Futian looked up at the sky. He walked down from the divine throne and came to a place below it. He then sat cross-legged as his perception was directed towards the heavenly path in the firmament. At this moment, Yi Futian felt the warmth again. At the same time, there was a divine light in the color of the rainbows that fell from the sky and was sprinkled all over Yi Futian. Bathed under the divine light, Yi Futian floated up and came high into the sky. His body seemed to have entered the heavenly path. A mysterious aura enveloped him and kept flowing into his body. Yi Futian let go of the world created by his own micro-heavenly path, as the 2 forces of the heavenly path resonated with one another. The divine power of law in this heavenly path then integrated into Yi Futian's micro-heavenly path. The ancient tree of the world was created by his mother, and then was given to him for him to use as he grew up. Later, it made the micro-heavenly path, but it was from the same source as this heavenly path. Yi Futian knew that his mother was waiting for him to come to inherit the power of this heavenly path. At this moment, Yi Futian seemed to have become extremely greedy, madly absorbing the power of this heavenly path. At the same time, many images were also rushing into Yi Futian's consciousness. In his mind, an astounding figure appeared. This figure stood between heaven and earth. They appeared like the supreme master in this world, in charge of the universe. It was the ruler of heaven and earth. Heavenly Emperor! An idea took hold of Yi Futian's mind. Instantly, he knew this figure must be his maternal grandfather, the founder of the heavenly path in the later era after the collapse of the original heavenly path. He was the master of the heaven realm / he was the heavenly emperor himself. Later on, Yi Futian saw some radiant images. It was as if he could feel them himself, and that he could even perceive the sensations within. The heavenly emperor was passing on the methods to him. This was the real inheritance. He was the true heir of the heaven realm. Now, the heavenly emperor passed on the divine methods that he had cultivated himself to Yi Futian. Yi Futian defeated Ji Wudao, took over the heavenly imperial palace, and was named the heavenly emperor. One after another, the shocking news was conveyed to the 7 realms and even the gods' ruins continent, astounding the world. The one who finally ascended the throne was not Ji Wudao as everyone thought, but Yi Futian, who was the true heir of the heaven emperor. He was the main successor, meant to inherit the heaven realm. Not long ago, it was said that Yi Futian had refused the inheritance of the divine prefecture. Otherwise, he would have been the ruler of both the divine prefecture and heaven realm by now. Everyone in the world realized that another peak-level figure had emerged aside from the 6 emperors. That person was Yi Futian, who had been cultivating in the original realm all along and had been suppressed by many forces in the divine prefecture. Who would have thought that things in the world could be so surreal? At the same time, the great emperors, who returned to their respective imperial palaces after the unsuccessful battle of the 6 emperors, also received the news. Even as part of the 6 emperors and the strongest existences in the world, they were still extremely shocked when they learned of this news. Dongwang the Great plotted for 200 years, and it was all for the return of his descendant. Furthermore, since Dongwang the Great set everything in motion, it meant that he believed Yi Futian was capable of changing fate despite the odds. Why was he so confident in Yi Futian? Was it just because Yi Futian was his descendant and the daughter of the heavenly emperor? What would happen now that Yi Futian had ascended the throne as the heavenly emperor and entered the 99th heaven to cultivate in that heavenly path? 1. Qi, Qin, Shu, Hua, chess, strings, books, and painting are the 4 traditional arts for educated Chinese ladies. By naming these ladies-in-waiting these 4 arts, Yi Futian extrapolated that there must have been 4 of them in total. The changes between heaven and earth began with the original realm. This was a prophecy from a long time ago, and now it seemed to be coming true. The land of the original realm ushered in the great changes in the world, and the gods' ruins continent revealed itself. In the land of the original realm, an extraordinary character had risen and become the current heavenly emperor. Now, this prophecy was spreading throughout the land of the seven realms once again, and there was even some more indication as to what might be the ultimate end of this prophecy. According to the news and the rumors, Futian of the original realm ascended the throne of the heavenly emperor. He would soon elevate his cultivation to the utmost level. He would change the sky above them and become a supreme existence in this world. This was the prophecy in its entirety. The changes of heaven and earth begin in the original realm. This prophecy circulated widely, and its influence was stronger than any other prophecies in the past. The world was seeing this prophecy being fulfilled little by little. Everyone was paying close attention to the reactions of those major imperial palaces. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. However, these major imperial palaces were surprisingly quiet and did not do anything. It was as if they were caught in a dilemma. Not long ago, in the Battle of the Six Emperors, many thought that it would end the way the world was and reshape the future pattern of the world by putting an end to a previous era. However, what they didn't expect was that the era did not end but had merely moved in a different direction. This change was quite unexpected. Today, the Divine Prefecture and the Buddhist sect had joined forces. In addition, Futian, who had inherited the throne of the Heavenly Emperor, was unprecedentedly powerful. He was stronger than Emperor Qin during his reign. And this time, there was discord between the human realm and other forces. On the other hand, the Devil World, the Dark World, and the empty Divine Realm had seen that the human realm had concealed its depth and was no longer trustworthy. They would not be acting rashly, for they knew that the human ancestor was not any less of a threat than Dongwang the Great. Therefore, no one dared to act recklessly. Hence, a very odd situation emerged. All sides remained surprisingly quiet. At the same time, the 99th heaven at the Heavenly Imperial Palace began to rebuild its order. Dongwang the Great arrived with the cultivators of the Imperial Palace and the Divine Prefecture, opening up the passageway between Dongwang Imperial Palace and Heavenly Imperial Palace. He had also ordered the rebuilding of the 99 heavens, quietly working for Futian behind the scenes so that Futian could concentrate on cultivation with nothing to worry about. It was the first time that the Dongwang Imperial Palace cultivators had seen Dongwang the Great personally handling these matters, and they couldn't help but feel amazed. Clearly, the great emperor must have had a lot of guilt towards Futian, so this was the way for him to make amends. After all, Futian had been abandoned at birth and experienced many hardships until he got to this point. He suffered Futian's strike in Dongwang Imperial Palace because he obviously felt extremely guilty about the whole thing. At the same time, Dongwang the Great forged a revelation divine matrix in the 99th heaven. As a result, the 99th heaven now possessed a certain level of defense. In addition, he had sent the cultivators of the Imperial Palace here, having them cultivate in the 99 heavens. Everyone from the Imperial Palace were cultivators who had followed Futian for a very long time. Now that Futian reigned as the Heavenly Emperor in the Heaven Realm, it was only natural for them to follow him here. In addition, he intended to open up the passageway between the Heaven Realm and Ziwei Segmentum so that the cultivators from Ziwei Segmentum may also enter the Heaven Realm to cultivate and continue to follow in Futian's footsteps. Time passed day by day, and it didn't take long for the 99 heavens to take on a new look. Celestial palaces and pavilions were everywhere, as well as various cultivation courts that were scattered in different places within the 99 heavens. In the heyday of the Heaven Realm, when the Heavenly Emperor was in charge of the Heavenly Imperial Palace, the palace was filled with numerous cultivators who were everywhere in the 99 heavens. It was as if they were in a world of their own. But after the fall of the Heaven Realm, the number of people in the Heavenly Imperial Palace shrank sharply, and the 99 heavens seemed quite empty. It was not until this piece of the heavenly path appeared that countless cultivators were attracted to the 99 heavens. However, these were just people who came here to cultivate, not cultivators who belonged to the Heavenly Imperial Palace, so they did not really count. Now, everything had to start over again. Above the 99 heavens, the heavenly imperial palace had been rebuilt, and it was extremely grand and magnificent. Dongwang the Great himself watched over everything. At the same time, the core members of Yi Imperial Palace were all here, comprehending the heavenly path and cultivating. Dongwang the Great raised his head and saw that Yi Futian was still cultivating high above the sky, so he did not disturb him. He came here to do those things so that Yi Futian could cultivate in peace. For Yi Futian, cultivation was more important than anything else right now. Your Majesty! At this moment, a voice was heard behind Dongwang the Great. Qin! Dongwang the Great called out. What will the young master do with the heavenly path that was transformed by the princess? Qin asked. I don't know. Dongwang the Great shook his head. When she heard his answer, Qin frowned slightly and said, Your Majesty, the young master is already exposed. Although nothing seems to be happening now, things may be brewing behind the scenes, which is very dangerous for him. The Devil Emperor, the Dark Sovereign, and the Evil Emperor didn't know some of the things that happened back then. Can what happened be made public now? Back then, they had their concerns and were reluctant to speak up, worried that the others would destroy the divine prefecture no matter the cost. However, now that friends and foes couldn't be more clear, there was no turning back. In the end, only one side could exist in the world. At a time like this, it was best to win over as many allies as possible. As part of the 6 emperors in charge of the order of the world, they can't be that ignorant, but they all had their own concerns. They knew very well who they could provoke and who could not be touched. Dongwang the Great responded. Your Majesty meant that they have always been aware of it. Qin said. Even if they were not fully aware, they were not completely ignorant either. Dongwang the Great replied. What's more, they have been working diligently to improve their own strength during the peacefulness these past few hundred years. However, this time, the human ancestor was a little too impatient. Your Majesty is referring to when the human ancestor made his move against the Dark Sovereign? Qin asked. Dongwang the Great nodded. The 6 emperors in the world created a balance, and all of them are willing to maintain this balance. But if there is anything that will threaten everyone's existence, they will not hesitate to obliterate it. The reason behind the action this time is not so innocuous. Each of them has their own interests to consider. However, the human ancestor's attack on the Dark Sovereign exposed the human ancestor's intention to slay the Dark Sovereign. Thus, the human ancestor made himself the real enemy. Qin nodded slightly. Obviously, each of the 6 emperors had their own plan, and none of them were the benevolent sort. However, I should make a visit to the outside, said Dongwang the Great. He then sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. Many phantoms separated from him, turning into 3 phantasmic Dongwang the Greats. They left the 99 heavens at the same time. He meant to visit the Devil World, the Dark World, and the Evil Emperor realm to meet the 3 great emperors on their own turf. Dongwang the Great knew very well that the human ancestor was the biggest threat of them all. He was the real mortal enemy. At the same time, outside of this world, in the human realm in the human divine palace, a figure sat cross-legged in the boundless space, and there was only one man there. It was none other than the human ancestor himself. At this time, above the firmament, the sky seemed to be moving as strands of terrifying aura fell from it. Above that slice of heaven, a pair of eyes seemed to appear, as breathtaking as they were frightening. When these eyes opened, beams of light shot out from above the sky, which turned out to be shadows of people, falling from the firmament, standing between this heaven and earth. Their unparalleled auras confirmed that all of them were extraordinary great emperors. After they came to this world, they looked around at this vast world. They had returned. The Dark Sovereign, who was cultivating, suddenly became alert in the dark court. He opened his eyes, looked into the distance, and called out, Dongwang! A phantom appeared in the distance, and it was none other than Dongwang the Great. At this moment, all the cultivators above the dark court were waiting cautiously, looking at Dongwang the Great. What was he doing here? Are you unhappy to see me? Dongwang the Great queried. Come on in. The Dark Sovereign replied lightly. Immediately, Dongwang the Great moved forward as he entered inside the Dark Court and stepped onto the highest point of the Dark Divine Palace. Out front, the Dark Sovereign was sitting cross-legged and cultivating. A terrifying dark storm loomed in the sky above and enveloped the entire court. "Are you here to ask for peace?" the Dark Sovereign asked. "Before I came here, I saw a bright continent within the bounds of the Dark Court." "Who is the woman on the continent?" Dongwang the Great asked. "It has nothing to do with you," the Dark Sovereign responded nonchalantly. "Coexistence of light and darkness. It's interesting for you to allow such a place to exist in the center of the dark world." Dongwang the Great continued. "You must know something about what happened back then and that the human ancestor is not as he seems on the outside. He has been inciting several of you to destroy the divine prefecture, killing Ji Wudao and invading the heaven realm, all because the existence of the divine prefecture and the heaven realm impeded on his plans. In reality, what the human ancestor always wanted was to rule over the world. This was also why after he thought he had killed me, he proceeded to attack you. I'm sure you are aware of it already. Say whatever you are here to say." The Dark Sovereign did not seem to have much patience. Many things were well known to them without beating around the bush too much. If the human ancestor succeeded in his ambition and ruled the world, what he would do to you will need no further description from me. Dongwang the Great ignored the other's response and continued. "Perhaps it will be as you wish, that the world will turn into total darkness. However, your idea for the order of the world to be remade will probably be shattered. The human ancestor will control everything in the world, and the cultivation world will fall into eternal darkness until the eruption of the next battle of Heavenly Path. Please keep reading on MYB0xN0VL. Com. Perhaps no matter who rules the world, the result will be the same. Only through destruction can we be reborn again," the Dark Sovereign said coldly, wisps of destructive aura pervading from him. It was so terrifying that he appeared like a god of the apocalypse. The goal of the Dark Sovereign was to bring darkness and destruction to the world. Only when everything was destroyed would rebirth be possible, and a different world could appear. If so, destruction is just another cycle of reincarnation. The next world will still follow the same old path. What will be the difference? Dongwang the Great remained steady in his aura. This world does not need destruction, but a different world with different people in charge of its order. The Dark Sovereign stared at him, only to hear Dongwang the Great's reply. "Whatever you choose, choose carefully." Having said that, Dongwang the Great turned around to leave without wasting another minute. They were both intelligent individuals, and at this level, he didn't need to say too much. Sometimes it was enough to have the key points clarified. The Dark Sovereign had never concealed his own will, which was to destroy the world, thus reshaping it. This was something that Dongwang the Great already knew. Therefore, he asked the other to consider carefully the kind of outcome that would be in line with his will. If it was an impossibility, what would be the choice of the Dark Sovereign? In the Devil World realm, at the Devil Imperial Palace, Dongwang the Great also arrived to see the Devil Emperor. In front of the Demon God Palace, the Devil Emperor looked at Dongwang the Great and said, "Dongwang, your plan has been realized. What are you doing here? Where is Yu Sheng?" Dongwang the Great asked, but it was about Yu Sheng. The Devil Emperor frowned and replied, "He's cultivating. Futian and Yu Sheng grew up together since childhood. Their fathers were good friends, and their mothers were sisters. Therefore, no matter where they stand in the future, they will be the best of brothers. Yu Sheng's affairs will naturally be Futian's affairs." Dongwang the Great looked at the Devil Emperor and continued, "I hope one day I can see the two of them fight side by side." When he finished speaking, Dongwang the Great bowed slightly and left. He was here only to deliver a brief message before he was gone. He didn't mention the Divine Prefecture and the Devil World, nor whatever that had transpired between them. It was just about Yi Futian and Yu Sheng. But there were already enough hints in what he said. If the Devil Emperor intended to have Yu Sheng inherit the Devil World, then in the future, Yi Futian would not do anything detrimental to the Devil World. Before, the Devil Emperor also heard something that if a supreme figure were to appear in the world, the devil world would not continue to suffer from the devil abyss. Similarly, Dongwang the Great also went to the empty divine realm to see the evil emperor. 3 phantoms found 3 of the 6 emperors simultaneously, bringing different messages. At present, the divine prefecture and heaven realm were facing the threat of the human ancestor. Naturally, they did not want to repeat like the last time, being surrounded and besieged by the other 4 realms. More importantly, he knew that the human realm had always hidden its true strengths. Before, the human ancestor thought that the battle of the 6 emperors would be the end of it all, so some forces were not mobilized. But inside the human divine palace, Ji Wudao had witnessed it. In the heaven realm, many cultivators were now pouring into the heavenly imperial city, wanting to enter the 99 heavens to cultivate. In heavenly imperial city, top figures from all over the heaven realm also gathered. Some hesitated whether to join the heavenly imperial palace and become part of the 99 heavens. Among them, there were many near-deity existences. At this moment, an astonishing aura suddenly appeared in the sky above heavenly imperial city. Many people sensed a coercion, their brows slightly knitted. They looked up at the firmament, and that sense of coercion was getting stronger, as if signifying the arrival of some terrifying figure. Emperor's might! At this time, inside the heavenly imperial city, the hearts of some high-level elders were beating wildly. They felt the emperor's might, and it was more than just one that they felt. Several great emperors had arrived and descended on heavenly imperial city. Everyone's hearts were palpitating. Was there about to be another war? Who were they that was coming to the heavenly imperial city? Above the firmament, an unparalleled figure appeared. He was clad in a dark green robe as his black hair flew wildly in the wind. He was a middle-aged great emperor. Standing there, he was like a god who ruled this heaven and earth. At the same time, in other different directions, there were also other great emperors there, standing above the firmament. At this moment, the entire heavenly imperial city was suffocated. Even the existences of the near-deity level felt a sense of powerlessness. Even individuals who were great emperors to be trembled in their hearts. Who are they? Everyone's heart was trembling. At the same time, Dongwang the Great, sitting cross-legged above the heavenly palace in the 99 heavens, opened his eyes. His eyes seemed to penetrate directly through the 99 heavens. He looked outside and saw those descending great emperors. It came sooner than he had expected. Had the human ancestor finally begun using his hidden power? Your Majesty! Several figures flickered and appeared in front of Dongwang the Great. You guys stay here. I'll go out and take a look, said Dongwang the Great. As soon as he took a step forward, he disappeared from the heavenly palace. Then, he came outside of the 99 heavens. 9 great emperors had appeared in the sky above heavenly imperial city, and they were scattered in various positions. When Dongwang the Great appeared, his eyes fell directly on the great emperor, who was at the very top in the sky. This great emperor was brilliant all over, and the silver cloak on his body was like heavenly armor. He had a sharp sensation all about him, and his eyes had an icy metal feel to them. He was the head of these 9 great emperors. More importantly, a primordial aura pervaded from them as if they were from ancient times. Ancient emperors. Dongwang the Great realized who they were with an accessing look at the 9 figures. You are the great emperors from before the collapse of the heavenly path. No one responded. Above the firmament, an extremely sharp divine light came from the great emperor clad in the silver cloak. The sharpness in those rays of divine light was enough to tear apart the void and obliterate those around them. Please keep reading on MYB0xN0VL. Calm. Revelation divine power surged around Dongwang the Great. When the sharp divine light descended, it was blocked by the revelation divine power. I had heard that in the times before the collapse of the heavenly path, in the fight against the heavens, many extraordinary great emperors were involved. Among them was Xinjia the great emperor, who was physically invincible. Yet there was rumored to be one other besides him, extraordinary and unparalleled in the world, known as the divine emperor Pijuan. In ancient times he had used his body of flesh and blood to rip apart the gods of the house Karura. His attack prowess was undeniable, Dongwang the Great said as he looked at that great emperor. Once upon a time, there were some ancient volumes kept in the Heavenly Palace, which recorded stories and characters in the times before the collapse of the Heavenly Path. Among them, there were tales about Divine Emperor Futian. Any great emperor had to be extraordinarily talented to use the title of Divine Emperor. He had to be someone with a remarkable world record, having killed many other existences who were also great emperors. I didn't expect that after such a long time that there would be people who still remember me, Divine Emperor Futian said with a sigh, but his eyes were still sharp. He looked at Dongwang the Great and said, "However, I'm still going to kill you today." When the Heavenly Path collapsed, it was known as the end of the gods. The Heavenly Path brought down apocalyptic catastrophes so that cultivators in the Imperial realm could not continue to survive in this world. Nonetheless, there were still many great emperors who managed to exist in another form and did not disappear entirely, Dongwang the Great said in a low voice. The people in the Heavenly Imperial City knew some of what he said, which had also been confirmed over the years. Indeed, there were many extraordinary great emperors who remained in the world, existing in other ways without completely disappearing. The human ancestor is the oldest great emperor who survived in the era after the collapse of the Heavenly Path. I heard that in the past countless years after the collapse of the Heavenly Path, he has been searching for traces of the existence of the gods. As the only great emperor who had survived the catastrophe back then, the human ancestor has found many ancient emperors. Dongwang the Great continued, "You are all elders from the ancient times. You must be those who the human ancestor found in the past countless years, and he has found a way to bring you back." The words of Dongwang the Great shocked everyone, and the hearts of everyone in Heavenly Imperial City were palpitating. They had a feeling that Dongwang the Great was correct in what he said, simply because it all made sense. The human ancestor was the most ancient of the great emperors. He was an existence that had survived in the era after the collapse of the Heavenly Path, hence his title as the human ancestor. How could he not have looked for those ancient emperors and any traces of them all these years? After the collapse of the Heavenly Path, when the gods of that era fell, how many treasures of heaven and earth were left behind? And how many otherworldly figures existed in other forms? It was impossible for the human ancestor to let them all go. No matter how one looked at it, the human ancestor might be the strongest existence in the world right now, but his strength was actually on a par with the other 6 great emperors, which was indeed a bit strange. Dongwang the Great did not want to say this just for the world to hear, but more importantly, it was meant for the other great emperors among the 6 great emperors. He had reminded them that the human ancestor was not a simple character but someone with hidden depth. Whatever everyone saw before was all an illusion. It was whatever the human ancestor wanted the world to see. The human ancestor had great ambition, which meant to plot against the Heavenly Path. Now, at the dawn of the Age of the Gods, many great emperors had returned, and the human ancestor seemed to have completed a very crucial step. He was actively resuscitating those ancient emperors and making their returns possible. Hence, the great emperor who appeared at Yi Imperial Palace, the great emperor who fought against Ji Wudao, and the great emperors who appeared here at this moment. However, judging the situation at hand, Divine Emperor Futian had to be the most powerful emperor among those who had returned. There was no way of knowing if the human ancestor had other extraordinary great emperors who might return one day. Of course, the human ancestor from before was also not the same human ancestor they were seeing now. As for what was really going on behind the scenes, Dongwang the Great couldn't completely figure it out, so he could only speculate. This news was definitely an earth-shaking secret to the cultivators in the world, that the human ancestor had been collecting the legacy of the gods since the collapse of the Heavenly Path. Also, he had now discovered ways for them to return and fight for him. If so, who else in this world could stop the human ancestor? The unification of the world was all but a foregone conclusion. Who else could stop it? If what Dongwang the Great said was true, then the key would be how many great emperors did the human ancestor have under his control, and whether he could make all of them return eventually. Divine Emperor Futian did not make a response to Dongwang the Great. Nonetheless, Dongwang the Great's estimation was very accurate. In today's world, what is the strength of the great emperors who stand at the pinnacle of the cultivation world? Divine Emperor Pejuan asked. When his voice fell, the sky behind him burst into an unparalleled divine glory that seemed to have turned into a divine matrix, inside of which were infinite divine arms. At the same time, the other 8 great emperors also released their utmost divine power. Above the firmament, they were enveloped by an unparalleled divine power. The hearts of the cultivators in the heavenly imperial palace were beating wildly, and those whose cultivation was weaker dared not approach. They were staying as far away from the battlefield as possible. The divine power of revelation exploded from Dongwang the Great, covering the boundless space. He looked up into the heavens, and astounding fighting will surged from his eyes. His robe fluttered and accentuated his undeniable magnificence. What if he was facing the ancient divine emperor? Dongwang the Great himself was the pinnacle existence of the world, ruling all of the divine prefecture. Just as Futian said before, this era did not belong to those from the past. Today, I am looking forward to experience the power of the ancient divine emperor firsthand. We may fight, Dongwang the Great declared loudly, his voice resounding throughout the heavens. At the same time, when his voice faded, the revelation divine realm was also released to its limit. For a time, except for divine Emperor Pejuan, the other 8 great emperors felt as if they had been suppressed to the extreme by that divine power. It was difficult for them to move. What kind of divine power is this? He asked Dongwang the Great. Clearly, divine Emperor Pejuan also sensed the extraordinary force behind the divine power of revelation. Divine power, revelation, replied Dongwang the Great. When he created the divine power of revelation, it was comprehended together. The divine power of revelation could reach the height of cultivation, and it was a supreme kind of divine power. Dongwang the Great and his wife had cultivated together, exploring the order between heaven and earth, as well as various other kinds of divine powers. Divine powers were distinguished by strengths, and there were strong ones as well as weaker ones. By comprehending different divine powers, the gaps between them could also be significant. For example, the divine power of the 5 elements was hard-pressed to compete with the divine power of the spatial rules. Each great emperors comprehended and perceived their own divine powers. If their divine power was strong, so was their combat effectiveness. The human ancestor could summon the chaotic divine thunder, and its power was second to none. What Dongwang the Great and his wife had been looking for back then was a divine power that could lead to the height of cultivation. The divine power of revelation held such potential. At the end of revelation, there was absolutely nothing. Everything in the world would be turned into nothingness. How terrible would that be? There would be no time, no space, as time and space would be annihilated and things into a dead silence. This was a path that Dongwang the Great carved out based on some extraordinary Buddhist methods, a path that would lead to the epitome of cultivation. Naturally, the divine power of time and space was an extremely powerful divine power, and Ji Wudao's black hole divine power. These were top-level divine powers. Please keep reading on MYB0xN0VL. When the revelation divine domain erupted, the 9 great emperors, except divine Emperor Pejuan, were summarily suppressed at the same time. The divine power of the revelation seemed to have invaded their bodies and completely imprisoned their divine powers. This caused a change of expression on the faces of the 8 great emperors, and their hearts were shaking. They had perished under the apocalyptic catastrophes that destroyed the world ever since the collapse of the heavenly path, but managed to continue their existences in another form. It was only countless years later that they had this opportunity to return. However, this era had changed, and it was no longer the same as before. In this era, great emperors were scarce. The 6 emperors were the strongest in the world. The mission they were tasked with was to kill Dongwang the Great, one of the 6 emperors, and his descendants. However, they could never have imagined that today, countless years later, the era had long changed. Even though the age of the gods had long since passed, and this was now an era when great emperors were rare, there were still extraordinary characters to contend with. This Dongwang the Great, in the era before the collapse of the heavenly path, would be another top-level great emperor existence with dominant and aggressive strength. 9 divine swords appeared in front of Dongwang the Great, and each divine sword contained unparalleled divine glory. They pointed toward the 9 great emperors. He stepped into the void, surrounded by the divine radiance that could only belong to a great emperor. As one of the most powerful great emperors in the world, Dongwang the Great was an extraordinary figure. At the moment when the revelation divine domain exploded, he had incarnated as the ruler of this world. "Since you have already died once, why bother coming back now?" Dongwang the Great declared loud and clear. His voice shook heaven and earth. As soon as his voice fell, the 9 swords traversed through the void, zooming in at all 9 great emperors for the kill. 1 sword for each man. Every sword was like a punishment from above, flashing with terrifying divine glory that shuttled through the space. In an instant, the bodies of 4 great emperors were penetrated. This was not because they were weaklings, but because of the divine power of revelation was far too strong. Under the suppression of the divine power of revelation, their strengths dropped dramatically, and they were obliterated by the divine sword in an instant. The 4 other great emperors exerted their utmost powers, but they could still stop the swords unleashed by Dongwang the Great. Accompanied by the strong light beams that shot out, the divine swords broke through everything and penetrated the other 4 great emperors one after another. They, too, were immolated in a blink of an eye. In a brief moment, all 8 great emperors were wiped out. They had turned to dust, obliterated by Dongwang the Great. Since they had already died once, why bother to return now? They were sent back whence they came. This unparalleled shocking blow caused 8 brilliant rays of light to erupt from the sky simultaneously, which made the hearts of the cultivators in the heavenly imperial city beat wildly. Their eyes were filled with shock. Previously, Futian had immolated 7 emperors with 1 spear strike, and now Dongwang the Great killed 8 emperors with 1 sword strike. Both father and son demonstrated unparalleled terrifying combat effectiveness. Countless people in heavenly imperial city looked up at the sky. They had not witnessed the battle of the 6 emperors previously, as they had only heard about it. Today, their hearts trembled as they witnessed the terrifying power of Dongwang the Great with their own eyes. This was Dongwang, the Lord of the Divine Prefecture, one of the 6 emperors. He was the most powerful out of the 6 strongest beings in the world. Of course, the 9th divine sword from Dongwang the Great was blocked by the divine Emperor Futian, who then destroyed it. Obviously, divine Emperor Futian was not on the same level as the other 8 great emperors. Even so, he still showed a strange look. His attention was fixed on Dongwang. It seemed that he had underestimated the ruler of the current world. The strength of Dongwang the Great was indeed powerful. The 8 great emperors who were immolated were pretty powerful and definitely were not weaklings. However, they were killed by Dongwang the Great in 1 blow. On the same battlefield, the divine Emperor Futian could certainly feel this force. He knew that the revelation divine realm had suppressed all 8 great emperors. Under the suppression of the divine power of the revelation, the 8 great emperors were weakened to the extreme, and none of them could unleash their divine powers freely. The result was demonstrated now. They had no chance to fully extend their powers before they were obliterated by Dongwang. Kill! As soon as the voice of the divine Emperor Futian fell, the infinite divine arms behind him shot out in the direction of Dongwang the Great. In an instant, the void collapsed and shattered, and those countless divine arms moved to pulverize the sky. The sharp eyes of Dongwang the Great glanced at the sky above as he was surrounded by the light screen forged with the divine power of the revelation. Those incoming divine arms were condensed by divine power, and were greatly hindered when they traversed the revelation divine domain. Later they were blocked by the light screen. Gradually, they had lost their powers. Bang! Dongwang the Great moved his thoughts, and those divine arms disintegrated and pulverized, shattered at almost the same time. At the same time, Dongwang the Great floated higher into the sky. As one of the strongest figures in the world, what could the ancient emperor do to him even if they had returned? It was inconceivable for him to be at a disadvantage. In this world, no one could look down on Dongwang the Great. The age of gods has come again, and the world will have a place to accommodate the likes of ancient emperors from the past. Although I don't know what relationship you have with the ancestors or what kind of agreements exist between you two, I hope you do not get involved," said Dongwang the Great as he looked at Divine Emperor Pijuan. The silver robe fluttered on the Divine Emperor Pijuan, his eyes fixed on Dongwang the Great with extreme sharpness. In the next moment, his body moved, aiming straight towards Dongwang the Great. The speed of someone at this level of cultivation was beyond frightening. Even the revelation divine domain could not stop his physical body. It was utterly unable to suppress the divine power of the Divine Emperor Pijuan. Dongwang the Great raised his hand and stretched it out, and the divine power of revelation directly covered the body of Divine Emperor Pijuan. Still, his opponent's body had already transformed. It was no longer a body of flesh and blood but a body of wei, incomparably sharp. To be mentioned in the same breath as Xinjiao the Great Emperor, one could only imagine how terrifying Divine Emperor Pijuan's body was. An extremely glorious divine light penetrated through the divine power of the revelation, piercing into the defensive light screen that surrounded Dongwang the Great. An extremely terrifying divine light illuminated everything as he raised his hand and pointed at Dongwang the Great. This finger was like the sharpest weapon, shattering all existence. Just as this finger was about to penetrate the brow chakra of Dongwang the Great, an unparalleled divine light appeared all around Dongwang the Great. When the finger came near him, its divine power seemed to be disarmed and turned into absolutely nothing. Even though the divine power crumbled within the void, the same did not happen to the attack from Divine Emperor Pijuan. His whole person glowed, and he was shrouded in silver divine light. He no longer had a material body but a body of the great path. His body grew large, as did his palm. His fingers turned into an imperial arm that pierced the domain of void, annihilating and recreating things. There was nothing it could not destroy, and it was attempting to prove it now. Although Dongwang the Great was powerful to the point that he was even capable of forming the domain of void around himself, he did not believe that Dongwang the Great could maintain his revelation divine power at its supreme state forever. If his revelation divine power had turned into the void, Dongwang the Great would have ruled over the world long ago already. Dongwang the Great blasted the air with his left hand, and the hit landed directly onto Divine Emperor Pijuan's body. With a loud sound, the supreme state of the divine power vanished, and both their bodies were thrown back at the same time. They withdrew, widening the distance between themselves. Dongwang the Great's terrifying fist attack did not result in any lasting damage toward Divine Emperor Pijuan. It was as if he had put on the armor of Tianxin, making his physical body unsurpassable and unbreakable. Bang! A loud sound broke out, and Divine Emperor Pijuan stepped forward. All at once, numerous rays of divine light enveloped the boundless area. It was as if the entirety of the vast heavenly imperial city was bound within the perimeters of the divine domain. The cultivators of the heavenly imperial city felt as if the world around had turned silver. It was a cold and hard world, and they realized that they were no longer able to move their bodies. They were all under the control of the divine power enveloping the area and were absolutely trapped. Their bodies were wrapped in silver divine light. It seemed like they had also been transformed into the same silver body as Divine Emperor Pijuan. The difference was that this body was a part of Divine Emperor Pijuan's divine power, so he had full control over it, but when it came to them, they were captives. It seemed as if the whole world had come to a standstill, and that the heavenly imperial city had become a world of ice, formed from numerous statues. Dongwang the Great frowned and increased the intensity of his revelation divine power to its maximum level. It enveloped the entire heavenly imperial city, reducing the strength of Divine Emperor Pijuan's divine power. He looked toward Divine Emperor Pijuan and stated, "You do realize you are an ancient divine emperor, don't you? This fight is between us. There is no reason to implicate innocent people." Please keep reading on MYB0xN0VL. Calm. As he finished speaking, he rose toward the boundless upper regions of the sky. Divine Emperor Pijuan turned into a beam of silver light and followed him. The two were beams of light, and they moved vertically upward, providing respite to the cultivators in the heavenly imperial city. They looked at the boundless upper sky and were vaguely able to make out the two legendary figures standing facing each other. Their divine domains of the Great Path were restraining each other, and were terrifying divine powers capable of holding the other captive. Subsequently, they saw the sky light up with a dazzling divine glow. It looked as if it was a light full of murderous intent. Both emperors rushed at each other, resulting in an earth-shattering effect that left even the heavenly imperial city shaking, though it was separated by the boundless space. In the 99 heavens, Futian, who had been cultivating behind closed doors, felt as if he had been shocked wide awake. He raised his eyebrows like he had sensed something. Shortly after, the scene of a horrendous battle appeared in his mind's eye. It was that between Divine Emperor Futian and Dongwang the Great. His eyes sprung wide open. A cold divine light filled his black-jet pupils. It was unbelievable that a strange contender had come to take them on again, and this one was powerful enough to go head-to-head with Father. Just who was he? Futian flitted down to the lower sky region. Immediately, many cultivators gathered around to see him. This was the first time Futian had woken up ever since he started meditating on the Great Path. How much progress had he made? Just going by his appearance, they could not tell, but they somehow knew in their hearts that Futian had surely gotten stronger. Futian looked around at the people surrounding him. His micro-heavenly world was currently able to effect a greater change on the flow of time and was getting better and better, progressing toward becoming a macro-heavenly path. If he let the people around him cultivate inside his micro-heavenly path world, there would be more time to be made use of. Young master. Lady Qin came up next to him. Even when Futian had inherited the throne, she was still used to addressing him as young master. In her eyes, not only was Futian their hope, but he was even more so the offspring of Her Highness. He was someone special to her. He was the continuation of Her Highness's life, so she naturally regarded him as a close junior of hers. What is it, Lady Qin? Is something the matter? Futian asked. The human ancestor was a great emperor during the ancient times. After he fortuitously survived, he has been on the hunt for the other great emperors after the Great Tribulation in a desire to bring them back. Now, it seems like he has found a way to do so. Previously, the 9 great emperors arrived. The one battling with His Highness now is also a divine emperor from ancient times, Lady Qin explained. Divine emperor? Futian furrowed his brows, feeling a little anxious. Even though he had uttered some rather unkind words before toward Dongwang the Great, he nevertheless still greatly respected this father of his. Dongwang the Great had given a lot, and from his perspective, he had already done the best he could have. Yes. He was an extraordinary great emperor, and had such outstanding achievements to his name that he could receive the title of Divine Emperor. Divine Emperor Futian was one of them. But you don't have to worry. Even though His Highness is from this age and is the youngest out of the 6 great emperors, Buddha has said that he has the strongest enlightenment affinity out of them all. Even a divine emperor from the ancient times is no threat to His Highness. Lady Qin seemed to be highly confident in Dongwang the Great's ability. The only one who could really constitute a threat to His Highness would probably be the human ancestor, and only him. Lady Qin continued. He was able to easily send a divine emperor and 8 great emperors out to battle. What a lineup! Just how many ancient characters has the human ancestor been able to get under his control all these years? Futian nodded. During the battle of the 6 great emperors, in a 4 versus 2 situation, his father could still get through without a scratch. He was highly skilled. Actually, if not for the lack of time, no matter your mother or His Highness, they were capable of proving the path and reigning supreme. But the human ancestor did not allow them the opportunity, and so you were needed to carve out a different path. I understand. Futian nodded. Let's go out and take a look. In a flash, they disappeared from where they were standing. The next moment, Futian's figure appeared in the upper sky region of the heavenly imperial city. The cultivators there were extremely overwhelmed upon seeing Futian appear, as this was the first time he had made an appearance in the outer parts of society since becoming the heavenly emperor. This silver-haired young man was the true heir of the Heaven Realm and the present Heavenly Emperor, as the descendant of Dongwang the Great and the Sovereign Princess. He was also the king of the original realm previously and the successor of Great Emperor Ziwei and Xinjiao the Great Emperor. After Yi Futian inherited the throne, many started digging into his background. His experiences of making it to the top step by step from the bottom had made him a legend. Who knew when was the time when he would reach the summit and stand at the top of the world, creating his own legendary story? Would the cultivators of the Heaven Realm have the chance to witness that? Yi Futian raised his head to look at the battle above the skies. In the high regions of the boundless sky, two superbly powerful characters were having a whirlwind of a battle. Currently, on the battlefield, the divine domains released by both of them were intersecting with each other. The dazzling silver world overlapped with the revelation world, its many silver pillars of light keeping the area in captivity. The whole world was flooded in an icy cold silver color. Divine Emperor Pejuan's physical body transformed into a beam of silver light and traversed within the silver-colored world. He repeatedly attacked Dongwang the Great from a close range, causing Dongwang the Great to be forced out again and again. As someone who could be compared with Xinjiao the Great Emperor, his physical prowess was next to none. Dongwang the Great's attacking power was not weak, but he could not hurt Xinjiao the Great Emperor's body of the path. A beam of silver light struck across the sky and Divine Emperor Pejuan's body transformed into an enormous silver spear using the powers of the path. It directly pierced the heavens and the earth, leaving a ray of silver light trailing in its wake in the skies as it charged at Dongwang the Great. Dongwang the Great lifted and stretched out his hand. The surrounding defense made of the revelation divine power once again got penetrated. This time it was by the silver divine spear. The revelation divine sword clashed with it but was smashed to pieces. The silver divine spear was like a supreme treasure, and its assault was continuous. Dongwang the Great released the revelation divine power within him to its maximum capacity. It enveloped the spear so that it was blocked again when it attacked. However, the silver spear started to vibrate violently, and its divine glow grew brighter and brighter. The remarkable silver divine light held Dongwang the Great's body captive, causing it also to turn silver and become like a statue. Break! Please keep reading on MYB0xN0VL. Calm. A command was cried out, and Divine Emperor Pejuan's silver spear pierced straight into Dongwang the Great's body. The silver light was brightest at that moment, and Dongwang the Great's body was a cold and stiff silver ice statue. Yi Futian, who was at the lower sky region, felt his heart skip a beat when he witnessed this scene. He immediately hovered up, wanting to enter the battlefield, but was stopped by Lady Qin. He looked at Lady Qin, puzzled. Lady Qin nodded at him and said, "The opponent's divine power can break practically anything and, of course, supremely powerful, but in this ultimate matchup of divine powers, revelation divine power will be the victor. This has been destined from the start." Yi Futian was surprised by Lady Qin's extraordinary confidence in his father. However, she must have a reason for saying that. He continued watching the skies above with his gaze piercing through the boundless space to the scene of battle. Presently, Dongwang the Great was just a statue and did not seem to have any advantage. The greatest great emperor of the present age is nothing much after all. Divine Emperor Pejuan's figure appeared, and he was carrying the spear in his hands. His voice betrayed the emotions of someone who had seen much throughout the years. The current world somehow left him feeling disappointed. "Huh!" Yet, just as he finished speaking, he frowned and blasted out his divine power, but it did not manage to smash the statue that was Dongwang the Great into pieces. On the contrary, he could sense the divine power within Dongwang the Great's body exploding fiercely. It was as if Dongwang the Great's body was hollow, and in there, his divine power could not survive. Divine Emperor Pejuan heard a sigh just then as if someone was sighing for him. Surprisingly, the sigh came in the direction of the statue that Dongwang the Great had turned into. Divine Emperor Pejuan felt the color drain from his face and was about to retreat when he realized that he had been surrounded by divine power already. The moment he thrust the spear into Dongwang the Great's body, all had been predestined. Bang! Divine Emperor Futian's body was suddenly blown to pieces. A piece of his physical body in the middle turned into nothingness and was destroyed. He lowered his head to take a look and saw that his body had broken apart. A horrifying divine power seeped frantically into his body, and Divine Emperor Futian started to tremble. At the same time, the statue turned back into the form of Dongwang the Great, as if he had not suffered any harm at all. Fear appeared in Divine Emperor Futian's eyes. Were the current 6 great emperors that strong? Divine Emperor Futian, your attacking prowess is next to none, but your enlightenment needs work. You've lost, Dongwang the Great remarked to him. Divine light encircled him, and he looked remarkably noble. Although he was a junior to Divine Emperor Futian, his magnanimity made it seem like he was the one who should command respect instead. Divine Emperor Futian looked at Dongwang the Great. Dongwang the Great naturally understood what the look in his eyes meant. Being a Divine Emperor Futian had every reason to be proud, and even at such a time, he would not open his mouth to beg for mercy. His prideful nature just would not allow it. But Dongwang the Great merely sighed and said, "Although you are my senior, I am unable to let you go. Please forgive me." At that, divine power immediately devoured Divine Emperor Futian's body, causing him to slowly turn into nothingness bit by bit and disappear from the world as if he had never existed before. Dongwang the Great looked at Divine Emperor Futian's vanishing form and was filled with emotions. From the beginning, he had made the preparations to finish off Divine Emperor Futian. Thus, he had lured him into this trap such that he would have no chance of escape. He and Yi Futian would have to face the human ancestor and his supporters in a fierce battle one day. A divine emperor would have dealt a lot of damage, so he definitely could not have let him go alive. He chose the most suitable solution to keep him here forever. He hovered down, and the cultivators in Heavenly Imperial City were shocked to see Dongwang the Great return. That day, 9 great emperors had arrived to set up a fight, including a divine emperor from the ancient times, and Dongwang the Great had finished all of them off, with not even one remaining. 9 great emperors, all gone. Seeing the return of Dongwang the Great surprised Yi Futian also. "Futian," Dongwang the Great shouted. "Why are you awake?" "I sense father's battle taking place and came here to watch," Yi Futian replied. Dongwang the Great was momentarily stunned by hearing how Yi Futian addressed him, but a gratified smile soon grew on his face. "The divine power that father used to kill Divine Emperor Futian seems to have overtaken the Revelation divine power. Was that the evolution of the Revelation divine power?" Yi Futian was curious to know. "I'll explain it when we get back." Dongwang the Great stalled on his reply, and the few of them returned to the 99 heavens. "In the past, when I was cultivating and meditating with your mother, we were looking for a way to get to the end of the cultivation journey. The Revelation divine power is a divine power that has the capability of helping us to reach that end, so your mother did some tests on me in the hope that I could better draw out the mysteries regarding the evolution of the Revelation divine power. And we did, in fact, succeed. The end of Revelation divine power is nothingness, but up until now, I have not really mastered nothingness. If not, things won't be the way they are now." Yi Futian slightly nodded upon hearing Dongwang the Great's explanation. It seemed that it was very much thanks to his mother that his father could be on the same level as Devil Emperor and the others. Although the Revelation divine power can point the way to the end of cultivation, it is not the right way. Therefore, you need not go down this way. Just fully incorporate all that your mother has left for you, and you will reach the end of the cultivation journey earlier than I. Dongwang the Great continued with his explanation. This was what they all hoped for. On the God's Ruins continent, where Futian the Great had been before, great emperors continually land in the original realm after coming through the space teleportation grand matrix. All great emperors had sent a representative before them to keep an eye on the area. The 7 great emperors that Yi Futian had killed with one spear had also all come from there. And even now, the area would still be visited occasionally by various great emperors. At present, in the lower sky regions of the area, there was a mountain peak. At the top of the mountain peak was a figure quietly sitting cross-legged. He was tall and had a remarkable disposition, Just by sitting there, he did not seem like he belonged in the world. That figure was Ji Wudao. Ever since the battle he had lost to Yi Futian, Ji Wudao seemed to have gone into anonymity, and never made another appearance. He knew that after he had been defeated, Yi Futian would receive his inheritance and fully take over. When that happened, he would have no hope of fighting with Yi Futian anymore. Unless he received more than Yi Futian. Ji Wudao quietly sat there, as if he had been cut off from the world and no longer cared about the things in it. Even if war were to break out in the heaven realm, he would be the last to know, and had no interest in finding out either. Time passed day by day. In the present day, a strange phenomenon was seen in the heavens. After that, a terrifying aura descended, and the teleportation matrix was torn apart as a figure appeared in the high sky region. He stood there, overbearing as could be. The figure looked all around him, while the Emperor's might swept across him, and divine consciousness covered the boundless area. Following that, he fixed his gaze on the peak of the mountain where Ji Wudao was. Please keep reading on MYB0xN0VL. Calm. In a flash, he headed toward Ji Wudao, and across the boundless space, a divine power descended upon Ji Wudao. Ji Wudao opened his eyes and looked up at the sky. He saw the figure that had just appeared, but his expression remained calm and unperturbed. In the past, an extraordinary cultivator had emerged from here. He was Futian the Great from ancient times, and his abilities were unparalleled. He had previously fought within the 99 heavens and lost when the other party borrowed the power of the heavenly path to defeat him. As if he had sensed something, the great emperor that had appeared suddenly stopped in his tracks and did not continue making his way toward Ji Wudao. Subsequently, he turned around and left as if he knew that Ji Wudao was not one to mess with. However, his wanting to leave did not mean he could leave now at this juncture. A terrifying divine power enveloped the area he was in, and Ji Wudao reached forward with his palm to grab across the distance. The great emperor's expression changed, and his divine power flared up. Then, a horrifying black hole appeared and devoured the divine power. The divine power flowed furiously into the black hole, and his body was also no longer under his control. His robe was fluttering frantically in the wind. The black hole grew bigger and bigger, and devoured the area he was in. Next, he too was finished, and no more to be seen. Almost immediately, the terrifying aura vanished, and everything went back to normal. Ji Wudao shut his eyes and stood there quietly as if nothing had taken place. He calmly continued cultivating. Not long had passed before he opened his eyes again and took a look at the heavens. Then, he transported himself toward the higher sky region. Reaching out his palm, he ripped a hole in the teleportation matrix and disappeared into the hole. After his departure, the hole revealed itself, and everything was back to normal as if nothing unusual had happened. From afar, a cultivator who had witnessed all of this felt his heart beating faster. That was Ji Wudao, who had once been thought to be the next heavenly emperor. Where did he go? In the heavenly palace, in the 99 heavens, Dongwang the Great had also received the news about what had happened in the God's Ruins continent. He had been chatting with Yi Futian and his godfather Yu Tu and Yi Baichuan. They were all fatherly figures in one way or another to Yi Futian. The news was brought by Dongwang the Great's direct disciple, Du. Dongwang the Great frowned slightly after hearing the news. Yi Futian, too, was surprised, and he asked, "Father, are those cultivators also ancient emperors? Where did they come from?" He had previously killed 7 great emperors with his spear. The 7 of them seemed to have been gods of judgment, but up till now, Yi Futian still had no idea where they were from. Dongwang the Great's expression turned graven after hearing Yi Futian's question. He answered, "Back then, your mother already had some inkling that these things would happen. We had also discussed this issue and felt that it could be related to the battle of the old heavenly path. The heavenly path is a conscious being, and when one reaches the ultimate cultivation level, they would be able to become the heavenly path, also the god of the heavenly laws, and the god of origins. Of course, you know about this," Dongwang the Great added. "In other words, the universe we are in is vast and without end. It contains numerous worlds and unlimited space. However, it can be created by cultivators who have reached the ultimate cultivation level. We must ask ourselves, how long has civilization existed? Probably hundreds of millions of years. In this long period, how much has happened that we don't know of? During the period before the disintegration of the heavenly path, we called it ancient times. But is there an even earlier period then? Dongwang the Great asked. Yi Futian looked thoughtful after hearing what Dongwang the Great said. He thought he understood what Dongwang the Great had in mind. The Buddha said that there is a world in every flower and knowledge in every leaf. In Buddhism, there are thousands of big worlds and thousands of little worlds. Who wrote these Buddhist classics? Dongwang the Great's expression also became serious. Is the heavenly path the only one? Is the universe we are in the only one? Dongwang the Great's contemplations caused the cultivators to fall into silence. The area grew acutely quiet. Were there any other heavenly paths? Were there any other universes? Yi Futian had created a micro-heavenly path within himself. If the micro-heavenly path was completed, in the future, many cultivators could go in there to train. Would they in the myriads of worlds in there know that there was another world outside? This was also part of the reason your mother wanted to recreate the heavenly path back then. If other universes and worlds existed, the recreated heavenly path should be the guardian. Thus, she aimed to reach the ultimate cultivation level and also hoped the people of the world would desire to reach a higher plane. Dongwang the Great drawled on slowly. And now, there are some things that are worth exploring further. But for now, you do not need to bother about these things. I'll find the answer, and when I find it, I'll let you know. For you, your present goal is still cultivation. No matter what we face in the future, we are still reliant on great power. Yi Futian nodded. Dongwang the Great's remarks were thought-provoking. If the 7 great emperors he had killed were not from ancient times, were they cultivators from other worlds? Was it because they could find the path to this universe after the disintegration of the heavenly path? No one knew. Where to did Ji Wudao go after tearing a hole in the teleportation matrix? You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.